Go Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Ming of Revolution. And what we got, 2 U.S. military men. 2 terrorist attacks. Both of them was based at the same, both of them was housed on the same military base. Now, before we get into that, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Salute, Queen. Salute, Queen. Well, we got to get into this. It don't look good. Salute, family. It don't look good. Look like the U.S. military has unleashed their trained killers to do some very nefarious shit in the United States. And everybody's putting it together. Social media is solving this. Who gives a damn about what the fake news is saying? Let's get into this today.
All right, what's up, guys? Dabu7 back at you with an update. We've got a lot going on here and a lot of connections to these events going down. And I first off want to say that in D.C., they shut down several blocks because there was a suspicious vehicle, driving up on the sidewalk and driving erratically, and they didn't know what was going on. So they told everyone to avoid the area. They have since arrested this guy. We don't have a name. We do know who the driver out of the Trump building bombing was, out of the Tesla. They've named him. We've got the names of both the NOLA guy and him. And it's pretty crazy here because there's connections that do go back to Fort Bragg. And as some say, they weren't in the same unit and this and that. That's fine. But neither was the guy Rouse that was plotting on Trump at the golf course. He had visited Fort Bragg over 100 times. Why?
It's all coming together.
Why? Well, I can tell you why. And I've got it posted on my X. What does Fort Bragg specialize in? PsyOps. They sure do. And it just so happens that this guy that was at the Trump place and blew it up in Vegas, he was commanded by Trump-hating McChrystal. Yep. And then the other guy out of NOLA, he so happens to have served in 09 and 10 in Afghanistan and was commanded by the same individual. So you have all this, and now we also
understand what he's saying. You have a general in the U.S. Army who was the commander of both of these 2 terrorists, and they was based at Fort Bragg. So all of that, we don't know if there's any ties. Even the news got to say, okay, maybe it's some ties. Everybody know what's going on here, but the world is watching like, damn, man, are these people actually finna assassinate their citizens, try to assassinate the president, cause a bunch of chaos in America? Absolutely, they are.
So have this former CIA lady that is like a global strategist on stuff that's going to pop off. She is warning that there are over 1,000 Al-Qaeda or ISIS, however you want to look at it, these terrorists in the country.
That's the CIA
right now, and that they're plotting and planning on doing something absolutely huge. And she brings up the talk of vests, suicide vests, that we haven't seen it yet, and that once they start to use these tactics, it's not going to go away. That these individuals are coming here prepared to die. Okay? You could talk about the MK aspect, where these apps are being used to spark people through frequencies and all this other stuff. And the weaponry is real, as crazy as it sounds. But there's a threat now of a huge event that's about to take place. And this lady warns, I'll leave a link so you guys can see it, and I'll play it on the next live stream. She warns that these guys are going to go in, blow themselves up, and as first responders show up to the scene, another person with the vest is going to enter and blow all them up.
It's called a double tap.
These are the tactics that they use, and that Americans are just not used to it. They're not ready for it. And beheadings, the car bombings, I've warned about all this coming. Warned about all of it, and it's begun. It has begun, but a huge event apparently on the horizon, and things seem rather imminent these days with
who needs Al-Qaeda or ISIS when you have people in the U.S. military who's willing to do this they goddamn self.
Inauguration approaching on the 20th. But that's some of the latest. That's the rundown. Join me on the live shows where I'm breaking this down further into greater detail.
And they want y'all to know. They want y'all to feel fear that y'all know y'all not safe. They getting off to this, you know. But okay, which one do we want to get into first? Let's do this one. See, Ukraine, all this. Zelensky probably paid these people to do this shit. Zelensky behind this type of shit, goddamn.
Well, a couple weeks ago, this lady predicted all of this.
How certain are you that we'll see something in 2025?
I'm certain we'll either have embassy attacks in 2025 or the homeland attack or both.
Yep, as the United States now is on high alert, as we keep hearing about a lot of stories all around the country, now with authorities looking at suspicious vehicles, suspicious packages, and activities, as the corporate media, along with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, keeps failing us. American people keep putting things together. I'm going to highlight in this particular video that are absolutely worth paying attention to, because this story is a lot bigger than, of course, a lot of people are letting on to, as the FBI initially lied about this entire incident and actually covered up the ISIS flag so the general public wouldn't see it. As there's now some larger questions surrounding what's up with Fort Bragg here that we're going to be getting into. As the latest information that we're getting is that bomb-making materials were found at the Airbnb that was linked to this crazy radical jihadi that took the lives of 15 individuals in New Orleans in an attack from his rented EV truck. This, as we're finding out that the attack was supposed to be a lot more horrible than it actually was, as improvised explosive devices weren't actually detonated, weren't actually used, but were made here for this particular attack. This, as the FBI has just found 150 plus explosives in Virginia, where the authorities there are saying that the suspect of was preparing for something big. As a lot of local government officials are asking questions to the FBI, and they're not getting a lot of answers here, including the Louisiana Attorney General, that is seeking more answers about potentially additional suspects here. As let's just be honest here, the FBI doesn't have the best track record when it comes to dealing with these type of particular events, preventing them, stopping them, as there's a lot of evidence of them.
Never forget, the government said yesterday they had people on video planting bombs. They said that. We didn't say that. Now today they're saying, no, it's no more accomplices, man. We done seen this shit in 9/11. We wasn't this sharp. See, on the first day, you do have some true facts that break through the news. Then the next couple of days, they go to clean it all up. It happened with 9/11. Little truth breakthrough. I told you, show us the video of the people that they said was planting bombs. You see, whoever those people is, now they're on to the next mayhem and mischief.
Them previously aiding and abetting them, as previous FBI agents have been caught texting, courting, and even pushing jihadis and other terrorists to actually commit horrible actions on the American people, as the FBI recently stonewalled U.S. Senator Grassley when he was trying to find out what happened during a major incident in Texas where the FBI was involved with the suspect of that crime. What was their larger involvement here? The FBI won't tell you. Were they involved in these larger attacks? Well, we don't know. We don't have any evidence of that, but the larger question still remains. Why did they not prevent it, as the lunatic here, specifically in this New Orleans case, was literally releasing videos on Facebook, declaring his idolization of ISIS and how he was going to take the lives of innocent people. As it's also important to note here that the U.S. intel agencies have extensive connections to radical jihadism, as there are a number of classified and declassified government documents and government whistleblowers that have proved that the United States government, with your tax dollars, has created ISIS, that this lunatic is taking responsibility for committing the larger acts that took the lives of 15 Americans yesterday in New Orleans. As the corporate media doesn't piece those pieces together, They're actually just botching this entire story, as they're describing the situation in Las Vegas as just simply a car catching fire. Nothing to worry about here, as MSN, New York Times, The Guardian, and other corporate media organizations literally were just obfuscating what's really happening here. As even the Associated Press was just fact-checked on their article saying that one person lost their life when a Tesla truck just caught on fire. As the community note now reads, the headline is misleading. It was not a mechanical problem. The explosives contained in the truck were described as fireworks, gas tanks, and camping fuel, which authorities believe were connected to the detonation system that was within the truck.
Look into, they saying this dude was shot in the head. So they're not going to tell us the truth, but they say he was already dead. That's a fact. We don't know when he was killed, because those Tesla trucks, they can drive themselves, right? Can't they drive? U.S. man, come on, man. Military pilot shot that man in the head. Electronically drove that car to Trump Tower and was gonna car bomb the motherfucking tower and blame this dude.
As this story just keeps getting more and more bizarre. As it's important to note here that the Federal Bureau of Investigations, from the very beginning of this, were obfuscating the larger impact of this, not only by declaring this as an event and not a terrorist event, but specifically also using jackets to cover up who was responsible for this crime. As now the FBI is telling us that the suspect in the New Orleans attack, quote, acted alone. This, as it looks like there was a similar style kind of event that unfolded in Las Vegas, as the FBI now wants you to believe that two separate individuals that actually trained at the same military base both rented electric vehicles from Turo and decided to do acts of terrorism with them, trying to take the lives of other innocent human beings. All, of course, on the same day. As the Las Vegas case is a little bit more intriguing than this New Orleans case. As, of course, if you look at the New Orleans suspect, you could see someone that was downtrodden, that dealt with poverty.
The two differences is the guy who committed the terror in New Orleans was ex-U.S. military official. He was out the military. The dude who committed the terrorism in Las Vegas is active duty U.S. military. This dude is in the U.S. He's dead now, but this dude was in the U.S. military.
Was living with goats and sheep, was divorced. You can see him describe his larger financial problems that the average American now routinely has to deal with. And you could see his kind of spiral out of control, as of course he also went missing, became erratic, and stopped talking to his loved ones, stopped seeing his family and his children right before the larger incident that unfolded in New Orleans. As this suspect in Las Vegas has now, according to the authorities, been confirmed as a Matt Livsenberg, 37 years of age, who still was an active duty Green Beret operations sergeant who literally was on leave in Germany. As of course, both of these people served.
This dude was on leave in Germany, the home of NATO, and decided to come back from Germany, the home of NATO, and come back here and commit an act of terrorism. He tried to blow the Trump Tower. The Tesla car actually saved it. If it would have been another vehicle, the doors would have blew off. There would have been a bunch of damage. A bunch of people outside would have been dead. But this guy is active duty, came from Germany, and came here and committed an act of terrorism. They trying to pretend like they just don't understand what's. Come on, this. You understand what's going on, and Joe Biden should be ashamed of himself. That pathetic, bumbling, stumbling message he gave yesterday. I do not feel safe with him talking. That's serious business. They need to bring somebody else out here to talk to us about what's going on.
At the same U.S. military base. Both of them rented electric vehicles, but the FBI tells us there's no link here absolutely at all. As we're also finding out that he went missing from his family and his wife days before this particular incident, highlighting a larger kind of bizarre case here. Why would someone actually do that? As previous photos of him show him wearing a Slava Ukraine shirt, and there's other people describing him.
Slava Ukraine. I told Zelensky's not far away from this. The man want Ukraine to win the war. And Trump is a problem. Trump is in the way. Trump said he's going to stop this war. This active U.S. military guy right here gave his life in a suicide bombing. And they need to say a terrorist bombing at Trump Tower. Come on now. You have 2 U.S. military individuals committed terrorism yesterday and attacked the United States of America.
Him as an anti-Trump, politically persuaded person who shared a lot of anti-Trump rhetoric on his personal Facebook page. Now, overwhelmingly, he looked like a very kind of successful, up-and-coming kind of guy, which brings into question, why did this happen? Why did he commit this larger kind of act that injured 7 and luckily didn't take anyone else's life but his? As there's also a lot of other online internet sleuths now connecting the dots and saying that this is also the same military base that Ryan Ruth visited over 100 times. According to Tony Ciruga, he claims that, quote, after extensive cell phone, laptop, and vehicle GPS data analysis that goes back 4 years, Ryan Ruth allegedly visited Fort Bragg 147 times, as Ryan Ruth is, of course, the second assassin that tried to take the life of Donald Trump and came very close to doing so after yet another major security lapse by the people at the...
He also was recruiting for Ukraine and wanted Putin to be defeated. They wanted the Ukrainian neo-Nazis to rule the world for all of eternity. That, you know, that type of white supremacist activity.
Secret Service that, of course, weren't even protecting the perimeter to where the president of the United States was. As larger questions about his involvement here is also something that a lot of people are bringing up, as Ryan Ruth also traveled to Ukraine, recruited Afghan soldiers.
They never bringing none of this shit up on the news. That's why the fake news is finished and over with.
To fight in Ukraine, had links to Azov, which is a known CIA front, as now we have another person that clearly sent a message to Donald Trump by exploding a cyber truck in front of one of his buildings that also was a larger supporter of the larger proxy war that's happening between the East and the West inside of that particular region. This says a lot of people are saying, hey, we need to find out what actually is happening here, what actually went down here. As my initial response to all of this is that I'm extremely skeptical of everything that we've seen, of everything that we heard, as I think it's fair to say something's up here. And I don't think this is the very end of this larger particular story that I think deserves a lot more of our attention. And if you agree, share this video with your friends and family members. We're going through a lot of drastic changes here as the
So the new year is off to a not so good start. What we know so far about the attack in the French Quarter of New Orleans. So this was a New Year's Eve attack on Bourbon Street in the heart of New Orleans's world famous sort of party district. At least 15 people were killed and dozens more injured in the early hours of New Year's Day after a man drove a pickup truck into crowds in the French Quarter of New Orleans and then opened fire before he was killed in a shootout with the police. Officials called it a deliberate attack and said the man, a 42-year-old U.S. Army veteran from Texas, had the flag of the Islamic State in his truck. That's ISIS, of course. The FBI said it was investigating the episode as a potential act of terrorism. In brief remarks to reporters, at Camp David, President Biden said he had been told by the FBI that the driver had posted videos on social media only hours before the attack, indicating he was inspired by ISIS. So here's one of the last times we'll hear from Biden as president of the United States.
Our hearts are with the people of New Orleans after the despicable attack that occurred in the early morning hours. To all the families of those who were killed, to all those who were injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know, I grieve with you. The nation grieves with you.
Gotta
I'm going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come. I want to thank our brave first responders and law enforcement personnel who stopped the attacker in his tracks before he could kill or injure even more people. I want to thank you to everyone at the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, including the FBI, for working nonstop to investigate this heinous act. The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened why it happened, whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby. The situation is very fluid, and the investigation has a preliminary stage. And the fact is that right now, excuse me.
This is disgusting.
There you go. The law enforcement and intelligence community are continuing to look for any connections, associations, or co-conspirators.
Yeah, it's a shame he dropped out. He had that election in the bag.
It would have buried Trump.
Would have buried
He
him.
had only stayed in.
And he was totally fit for 4 more years, that guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing. That's one thing that one box off on the bingo card that we hadn't checked off yet that now we could check off. Add that to Joe Biden's record. ISIS comes back, right? Remember ISIS? We haven't heard from ISIS in a while, but apparently they are behind this attack, or an ISIS-inspired
Behind it or
attack.
inspired?
Well, it's tough to tell where one begins and the other ends, since they could
Right.
very well brand this guy, label this guy an ISIS combatant. Like Joe said there, it's a fluid situation. Who knows? This could be obsolete by this afternoon, but we do our best with the breaking news. The man sped a truck around a police car blocking Bourbon Street at about 3:15 a.m. Wednesday
I was going
morning.
to say, you can't even drive on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, no, it just broke through the barricades. Yeah, that is pedestrian only. He then opened fire, officials said, and died in a shootout with police. 2 of those injured in the attack were police officers, officials said. This man was trying to run over as many people as he possibly could, the New Orleans police superintendent, Ann Kirkpatrick, said at a news conference Wednesday. He was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. So here is a map showing you the plan of action there. That was the turn around the car there. The truck went onto the sidewalk to get around the police car and then down Bourbon Street, which is, as Russell said, as someone who's been to New Orleans, quite a few times, he knows this area well, that is pedestrian only. So obviously,
Yeah, that's the beginning of Bourbon Street where the truck entered.
Right. So you could obviously do a lot of damage there. People are walking in the streets and you drive your truck straight through. And this was just, like I said, a horrible
That's
scene.
especially New Year's Eve. On any given weekend, that street is packed with people from one end to the other. On New Year's Eve, it must be like Mardi Gras.
Yeah, exactly. So just a horrible scene, obviously. Investigators said they found what appeared to be improvised explosive devices in the truck and were trying to determine whether the devices were viable. It is not clear if any such devices were detonated. Alethea Duncan, an FBI official, did not rule out that there could be an ongoing threat, saying that agents were running down leads in an effort to try and make sure that there was no further danger. The man who drove the truck onto Bourbon Street was identified by the FBI as Shamsud Din Bahar Jabbar, a 42-year-old U.S. citizen from Texas. The truck, which officials said carried the flag of the Islamic State, held weapons as well as the improvised explosive devices, and potential bombs were also found elsewhere in the French Quarter, officials said. Mr. Jabbar served almost 8 years in the U.S. Army and deployed to Afghanistan from February 2009 to January 2010, according to an Army representative. He transferred to the Army Reserve after leaving active duty in January 2015, and then left the reserves as a staff sergeant in July 2020, the Army said. In a YouTube video from 2020 that appears to have been posted by Mr. Jabbar, he spoke positively about his skills in a post-military career in real estate. He said he had been born and raised in Beaumont, Texas. I've been here all my life with the exception of traveling for the military, he said. He said that in his 10 years in the armed forces, he had worked as a human resources specialist and an information technology specialist. So that was the first attack. Yesterday, one dead after a cyber truck explodes outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. And you talk about an image. I mean, that is contender for image of the year already. One person was killed and at least 7 were injured after a Tesla cyber truck exploded outside the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas on Wednesday morning, the authorities said, and officials were investigating any possible links to an earlier attack on a crowd in New Orleans. Sheriff Kevin McMail of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department said during a news conference that the authorities believe this to be an isolated incident, but have not yet ruled out a connection to the Wednesday morning attack in New Orleans that killed at least 15 people. More on that in a moment. Sheriff McMail said the authorities had found gas canisters, camp fuel canisters, and large firework mortars in the back of the truck. It was unclear how they had been ignited, Sheriff McMail said. There is no further threat to the community, Sheriff McMail said. As of Wednesday afternoon, there was no indication that the explosion was connected to ISIS, which President Biden said had inspired the New Orleans attack, but the investigation remains ongoing, he said. At a news conference on Wednesday, Jeremy Schwartz, the acting FBI special agent in charge in Las Vegas, said the agency is investigating whether the explosion was, quote, an act of terrorism or not. I know everybody's interested in that word and trying to see if we can say, hey, this is a terrorist attack, Mr. Schwartz said. That is our goal, and that's what we're trying to do. So the reason there was some confusion about this, even though obviously the timing seems hardly coincidental given the attack in New Orleans the night prior, is that apparently there were no fatalities in this explosion except the driver himself. So there was a question, could this have been an accident? Elon was emphatic it was not an accident because he definitely wants you to know that those cyber trucks do not explode on their own unless they're sabotage. So he was really out in front of this.
Except for the one last week.
Right. Yeah. Except for the ones that cut your leg off if you close the door too fast or whatever it is. We did that whole segment on the Jimmy show.
Was it one of the cars or was it a Cybertruck that went on fire and the people couldn't get out? It was like a couple of weeks.
I think that was one of the cars actually. I think that was a Tesla. Yeah, I don't think that was that was just one of the car models. But we did have breaking developments overnight. Now, this was put out by ABC 7, their local Denver station. So this is, reported by a, fairly credible outlet. We cannot confirm it yet, but this has been making the rounds because it was reported by a credible outlet here. Suspects in Vegas explosion, New Orleans attack served at same Army base. Sources tell Denver 7 investigate. So assuming this is true, which at this moment we don't have reason to believe it isn't, we can't confirm it and report it as 100% fact, but you have an outlet here saying they have sources saying that they went to the same Army base. That is the plot thickening significantly. That is a link that authorities had been looking for since the second event, obviously at the Trump Hotel in Vegas. So the Colorado Springs resident, so the reason this was reported on in Denver is because the truck was rented from Colorado. So the Colorado Springs resident suspected of detonating a Tesla Cybertruck in front of a Las Vegas hotel, and the Texas man accused of driving a pickup truck into a crowd on Bourbon Street in New Orleans served at the same military base, sources told Denver 7 investigates. Authorities were investigating the link as a possible connection between the two New Year's Day attacks, those sources said. Well, yeah, that seems fairly obvious if this checks out, which they're saying it does. Matthew Livelsberger, who is the driver of the Cybertruck, apparently, is accused of renting a Cybertruck in Colorado Springs, driving it to Nevada, and packing it with firework mortars and gas cans before exploding it in front of the Trump International Hotel in Vegas Wednesday morning, killing himself and injuring 7 others. Shamsuddin Jabbar is suspected of plowing through a crowd in New Year's revelers in the French Quarter hours earlier, killing at least 15 and injuring dozens more in an attack that sent shockwaves through a famous New Year's destination the morning of a scheduled college football playoff game. Both men were confirmed to be Army veterans in the aftermath of the attacks, both of which were being investigated as possible acts of terrorism. Late Wednesday, multiple informed sources told Denver 7 chief investigator Tony Kovaleski of the link between the two suspects' military service. So it comes from multiple sources, not just one, but multiple sources are saying this now. Both men use vehicles rented from the Turo car rental marketplace, which is like an app you could rent, like people basically rent their own private. It's like the Airbnb, but for cars.
Right,
people have cars and they'll rent it out, and they charge you by the mile, whatever. I rented a Turo when I was in LA last. In a statement, a Turo spokesperson said the company did not believe either suspect had a criminal background that would have identified them as a security threat. Jabbar enlisted in the Army in March 2007. We read those biographical details in the last piece. We don't have to go through that again. Authorities do not believe Jabbar, who was killed by officers, acted alone in the truck rampage. Denver 7 is working to learn more about Livelsberger's background. Federal agents were staking out one of multiple Colorado Springs addresses associated with him late Wednesday, awaiting a search warrant. So that is certainly quite chilling if they both came from this same military base. That would suggest something pretty sinister. Candace Owens just tweeted out. I just saw it once we started the countdown. This was literally breaking to the point where I couldn't even put it in the show, in the slide, but I'll read you her tweet. I bookmarked it. She said, the New Orleans terrorist and the guy who blew up the Tesla truck both had served at the same Army base. Given what we know about the history of sadistic government programs in our military, this brings forth more questions than answers. Yeah, I mean, that's a consideration as well. So it's very strange. I mean, that stinks. And I don't mean stinks like it sucks. I mean, that smells fishy. If they both served at the same Army base, it suggests obviously a coordination between them, given the coincidental timings of the attacks. And yeah, it does raise a lot of questions. Like, I don't know where you go next as a journalist, because looks like there's going to have to be a visit paid to this Army base. Looks like there's going to have to be some research done on this base, and that could be dangerous work.
Excuse me, just one more question. Why does Al Qaeda never attack Israel?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that could be dangerous work. Obviously, just a horrible start to the year. There was a shooting in Queens last night. I mean, even if you don't suspect the kind of foul play that, frankly, I do, you're looking at symptoms of social collapse. You're looking at a very, very fractured social fabric here, heading into an administration that inherits Miriam Adelson's wish list for greater Israel expansion, promising crackdowns on dissent. This kind of instability, whatever, like, it's too soon to say definitively what these were, right? I mean, we know they were. I think it's fairly safe to say they were terrorist attacks, right? I mean, that's fairly obvious at this point. In terms of what's not obvious, what we can say is that this kind of instability ahead of an administration that we know is going to try and crack down on dissents, on protests. We're going to get into that in the next segment. It's a recipe for very, very, very difficult and potentially frightening times. This is not 2017. I've said this over and over again. Don't think that because when Trump took office in 2017 and the most newsworthy story of that year was Rachel Maddow losing her shit about Russian collusion. Don't assume it's going to be those kind of fun and games this time. It is not. This is a much more dangerous world. It's a much more fragile world. They are gearing up to really, I think, make this country resemble something it hasn't in a while. And so hang on to your hats. Hang on to your hats. And you know, look, this is this is a difficult segue, but you know, this is why I think you know, we as a left, as an opposition, you know, have to really get serious. You know, because this kind of environment, this is a recipe for fascism, for just absolute fascism.
Well, of course, the Patriot Act laid the groundwork for fascism. All you got to do is throw the switch. Once you have the legal precedent that you can detain someone without charges indefinitely by calling them a terrorist, well, all bets are off. Right. Over in the years since the Patriot Act was created, the surveillance technology is beyond anything they imagined at that time. Here in New York and in many cities, but particularly in New York, there's a fucking camera everywhere. Everywhere you go, you're on camera. Everywhere you go, you're on camera. And it is like that in a lot of major cities. The way you're being tracked online, all of your activity is being stored someplace, right? Everything you're doing online is being stored someplace. They can grab pretty much anybody if they just decide to do it, if they have the will to do it. I do not understand why anybody would be celebrating Crazy Eyes with the Manson lamps over there. Patel, a guy coming in who's talking about how we're not doing enough for Israel, in combination with an AG nominee who says that she wants the FBI questioning protesters. I don't understand why anyone who cares about speech and civil liberties would think this is a good thing, would be celebrating the nomination of these people. They're telling you very clearly what they're going to do. And yes, things like this, whatever the motive, whatever the reality behind it happening, it is certainly going to function as a pretense for people like Patel, people like Bondi, people like Trump to go ahead and do what they have given every indication they want to do, weaponize the government against dissent.
Absolutely. Yes. Took the words right out of my mouth. I just want people to understand, we're not saying that the people named in these reports are not guilty of doing what, I mean, we are going based on the reporting. We're not saying that. Obviously, a guy drives a truck through a crowd of people. The first guy we know that's confirmed, seems like both of those names are confirmed. And those are, of course, acts of terrorism. So we're not saying that they shouldn't be cracked down upon. What we're saying is that, as Russell just said, and you took I was going to mention those three names: Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Donald Trump. You don't think this crowd is going to come into office in this kind of environment and use these events as justification to greatly expand executive power? You got rose-tinted eyeglasses on. Yeah, you got, like, this environment.
The man wrote a children's book in which he plays a wizard defending King Donald.
Man Wise, and today I had to bring this one to your attention because the events unfolding are not only shocking but demand a closer look. Let me keep you informed on what just happened outside of Donald Trump's tower in Las Vegas yesterday, a situation that's as concerning as it is unprecedented. Let's start with a bit of context. If you guys recall, I'm sure you guys remember Ryan Ruth. He's the individual who previously attempted to assassinate Donald Trump during the golf outing. Now, it seems that two more incidents, very, very close, are tied to Ruth, and that has emerged at this point. And in New Orleans, a man carried out a tragic attack, leaving 10 people unalived and over 30 people injured. And I heard that there were 2 or 3 more people that have perished as well. Meanwhile, in Las Vegas, another individual detonated a Cybertruck outside of Trump's hotel. The unsettling part is that both events happened on the same day and appear to be connected. And here's where it gets even more chilling. Both individuals were reportedly veterans, obtained their vehicles from the same company, and had ties to Fort Bragg, the very military base that Ryan Roof visited over 100 times prior to his attempted attack on Trump. This web of connections is too significant to dismiss as coincidence, raising serious questions about what's truly going on here. According to reports, the individual behind the Cybertruck explosion seemed intent on targeting Donald Trump directly. When you piece together the timeline and the links between these individuals, it paints a deeply disturbing picture of potential radicalization and coordination. Now, Benny, he has some additional insights into these events that we'll delve into shortly. But one thing is clear. This is far from a peaceful political climate. The notion of a peaceful transfer of power seems increasingly distant when incidents like these are occurring. And before we dive in deeper, if you haven't done so already, please make sure that you like, share, subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on so you never miss an upload. Watch this video all the way through. And I want to send prayers, one, to Donald Trump, but more to the families of the people who have perished in the attack out in New Orleans. My prayers and condolences to you guys. Hey, it is crazy out here, so we must stay prayed up. And as my shirt says, if pray, don't worry. It's something my grandmother used to tell me all the time. She used to say all the time, if you're going to pray, don't worry. God got us. Again, like, share, subscribe, watch the video all the way through. And without further ado, let's go.
Guys, it's Benny. We're not idiots when we see with our own eyes a vehicle explode like this. I don't care if you're an explosives expert, if you are somebody who's just watched enough Hollywood movies. This is a attack. This is what happened in front of the Trump Tower yesterday. And we said from our initial reporting, this seems like a targeted attack. The use of a Cybertruck, the use of a Tesla right in front of the doors, and then the explosion like this that looks like fireworks. And you can see here at the bottom, obviously, this is what a actual car battery fire looks like. Okay, it looks like a car that, you know, slowly lights on fire because the battery malfunctions. This is a bomb, and we've been proven right in that, ladies and gentlemen. Elon Musk confirming that it is a bomb, and it was a bomb carried in the bed of the Cybertruck, as all vehicle telemetry was positive at the time of the explosion. Who lit the bomb? Well, the individual that's being investigated as an act of terror, as a terrorist, is in fact a member of the armed forces and a high-ranking member of the armed forces, an operations director, intelligence manager, currently serving, not a veteran. There was an attack by a veteran, an Army veteran. Both guys are in the Army. Within the hour in New Orleans. Now, some are saying that there are some very strange connections between the two of them. Nonetheless, we're going to take at face value what we know now. And what we know now is that both attacks used electric vehicles, electric trucks to be precise. They both targeted iconic American properties or areas like Bourbon Street in New Orleans, very famous, Trump Tower, very famous. They both happened within hours of each other. Both these guys are Army veterans. Both these guys went to Fort Bragg, were in Fort Bragg, and were potentially stationed and serving together. This is the guys linked in. Remote Autonomous Systems Manager, Special Forces Operations Manager, Remote Autonomous System Manager. I'm telling you what that is. This guy was serving in Germany right now. He's flying drones. He's flying drones in Ukraine. I'm telling you, that's exactly, he's doing that right now. He's active service right now, active duty right now.
It's a fact.
It's crazy. This is crazy. So the individual whose name is Matthew Leivelsberger was currently actively serving.
Forces soldier assigned to 10th Special Forces Group, according to 4 U.S. officials, that he holds the rank of Master Sergeant, a senior enlisted rank, these officials said. 3 officials said he was on active duty serving in Germany, and he was on leave when this happened on
He thought he was going to bring Trump Tower down with his little car bomb.
New Year's Day. He has not been identified publicly, and authorities are still trying to work out whether this was a terrorist attack.
What do you think it was? What do you think it was? You can see inside of the vehicle the bomb. Elon Musk says it was a bomb planted inside the vehicle. You know how many cameras there are on these Teslas? Like you see everything that's going on around it. But the connections get darker and stranger. Okay, and I want to.
You guys don't find it suspicious that the mainstream media keeps
I
trying
want to see him in the car. Somebody need to zoom into that car of him driving that car, because they say he was shot in the head. That car blew up. But the police say he had already had a gunshot wound. Man, they could have had that car driving automatically. He could have been dead, and the car just was gonna blow up. You know, and he's a patsy for Zelensky and NATO.
Trying to say that this is not a terrorist attack. One of the first things that the sister from the FBI, when she came out, one of the first things that she said, this is not a terrorist attack. Have you guys noticed that? You guys don't find that suspicious?
Focus specifically on the Ukraine connection here, because I think this is particularly chilling and scary. Remote Autonomous Systems Manager. He's in Germany. What is this guy doing? He's building and flying drones in Ukraine. That is what this individual is doing. We know this is happening. The New York Times has reported on this happening. America provides drones and sophisticated warfare. They're testing it all out on the front lines of Ukraine. Germany is where we have huge military installations, and this is where these operations are centralized. He was in the special forces. This guy had extremely high ranking, extremely sophisticated operational detail. And Jack Posobiec saying this is a massive red flag. Operations director and intelligence manager with special forces experience.
Yeah.
We have no idea if this had any.
This is a NATO attack. He just left NATO facility in Germany. This is a NATO attack on the United States, and they went targeted Trump Tower. That's just a fact.
To do with it. He was married to somebody who has a history, and I don't want to
threatening Trump. You better not pull out of that war. This was a warning to Trump. Don't you dare try to stop the money laundering that's going on in Ukraine.
Belabor this too much, but she has a history of posting, anti-Trump content. So she was clearly married to somebody who really didn't like Trump, but he himself did not post much from a active perspective. But she was posting like Democrat propaganda. Okay, so we also know that the ISIS terrorist who attacked New Orleans was a Democrat donor. We know that as a matter of fact. Reports are surfacing of the Fort Bragg connection between Shamsur Din Jabbar, this is Shamsur Din Jabbar, this is the ISIS terrorist, and Matthew Leivelsberger, who's been named as the Vegas Cybertruck driver. Fort Bragg has been listed as a common military base, and it's plausible that both of them served there at the same time. Why is this pertinent or interesting? Well, ladies and gentlemen, because Trump's assassin also visited over 100 times Fort Bragg and even stayed the night. That's why it's interesting. This is crazy. Okay, here we go. This is a guy named Tony Segura, and I love following his account. It's very interesting. Big data pioneer, Intel ops, investor, board member. He worked for the CIA, NSA contractor, and he would track cell phones. Tracking cell phones, obviously, very lucrative business because you can really figure out, what people are doing, where people are going, get all the data. You can geofence. You can figure out a lot of interesting stuff by tracking cell phones. But we don't have time to talk about that right now. What this guy is saying, Tony Segura, is that after extensive cell phone, laptop, and vehicle GPS data analysis, because all this stuff is public through the carriers, you can buy the information through the carriers, right? Going back 4 years, Ryan Wesley Routh visited Fort Bragg 147 times, staying overnight 29 occasions. Why is this individual going to Fort Bragg? What's going on at Fort Bragg? Reach out to some people for answers on this. Mike Benz and some other individuals that I know in the military and military intelligence. What's going on at Fort Bragg exactly? Here's what we know about Ryan Routh. Ryan Routh is somebody who recruited fighters from Afghanistan, from like ISIS hotbeds, to go fight in Ukraine. They did no-look visas, meaning Ryan Routh had some type of connection with the U.S. State Department to get fighters into Ukraine, as many bodies as he possibly can. Ryan Routh was very public about this. This guy is here pictured, obviously, in Ukraine. Here's him in Ukraine. Here's him at the U.S. Capitol. How this guy afforded all this gear? He didn't work. How this guy afforded to get to Ukraine? Nobody knows. Who is Ryan Routh working for? He's the guy, of course, who was going to kill Donald Trump on his golf course. Well, we know, as a matter of fact, he was working with and for Ukraine, right? He was literally in Ukraine recruiting fighters. His entire life, his entire persona was about recruiting fighters. Some of the first people that Ryan Ruth was followed and was followed by on X were CIA analysts. This guy has some really, really dark connections. Now, I don't know exactly how deep they go, but here's what I do know, ladies and gentlemen, that the individual who blew up the Cybertruck in front of the Trump Tower in Las Vegas is wearing a Ukraine shirt here in this photo. This is a Ukraine army shirt. This leads me to believe that this individual is clearly has some type of connection to Ukraine. He's in Germany flying drones. So what do you think he's doing exactly? Anyway, the point is that all of these guys were all at Fort Bragg. Were they at Fort Bragg together? Is there like a through line connection here? Not exactly certain. But it is a very chilling connection when you consider the fact that nobody has explained why Trump's would-be assassin, was at this U.S. military installation 147 times. What was he doing there? He doesn't serve in the military. This guy's a crackpot. This guy's insane.
We need some answers. We need some answers.
Like a known criminal. He's been arrested 72 different times. He was in the FBI database for owning a weapon when he's a felon, so he can't own a weapon anymore. Why is he staying overnight? What was he doing? Why was he staying overnight? What connection does he have with the State Department where he can promise people no-look visas into a war zone through the United States governor? This dude was an op. This is like pretty obvious. And then lo and behold, we have this guy blowing up his vehicle, blowing up some vehicle for some crazy, he's an active service member of the intelligence community, blowing up a vehicle at a Trump property. Here he is in a photo wearing a Ukraine shirt. He was doing active duty service in Germany.
That picture on the news.
Flying drones. Yeah, okay. No. I mean, remote and autonomous systems manager. What do you think that is? Dude was fighting for Ukraine. Special Forces Intelligence Sergeant, Defense Analyst, and Strategic Studies. Here's what we know. U.S. Army spokesperson confirms that the suspect, Matthew Leibensberger, was active duty Special Forces Operations Sergeant on leave from Germany. He was right there with this 10th Special Forces Group. Jeez. How does such a person get radicalized? Look at this. LinkedIn. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, a lot more questions than there are answers.
Lot more questions than answers. But are we watching the fall of the new Rome? Is that what we're watching? When you think about what caused the fall of Rome, one of the number one issues in Rome was political instability.
This is what NATO does. This is what the CIA does, commit terrorist acts to cause destabilization. See, they letting Trump know what his presidency gonna be. Not bombs going off and Al-Qaeda striking all over the world, right here in the United States, and they're behind it.
And corruption. Think about this. Think about where we are right now. Tons of corruption and a lot of political instability, especially over the past 4 years. Weak leadership. Rome had a series of ineffective and short-lived emperors. Now, fortunately, we do have Trump getting back in office, but these people are trying to do everything that they can to sabotage him before he gets there. Corruption and inefficiency. Think about our government right now. There's a lot of corruption within the government, and there's a whole lot of, bureaucracy that is bloated and ineffective. And then think about the other thing, division of the empire. And that's where I was getting to with everything that's going on. There is a divide in this country right now between those on the left, those on the right, those who believe, those who don't. There is a divide, and we're literally watching our country crumble from the inside out. And our enemies are sitting back watching this. And this is just so unfortunate, man. It's so unfortunate. The sad part about it is that there's a lot of people out there that don't even know that this is actually happening in our country, and they don't really understand the history behind other other superpowers and world powers, throughout history. And they don't understand that we're literally walking on frozen ice and summer's coming.
Yeah, for the collapse.
We have to get answers to this situation. We have to make some changes, and we need somebody that can bring this country together, because if not, we won't have a country. Again, my prayers and condolences to the family members who have lost people in this tragic incident out in New Orleans. I'm hoping that they catch this guy, that went and blew up the Tesla truck out there in Vegas. Obviously, they caught Shamsur. He's no longer, amongst the living. And ultimately, I would assume that there is somebody else pulling the daggone strings, and they need to be caught and prosecuted to the fullest extent. Again, we have more questions than answers today, and hopefully we'll get answers ASAP.
Connection. The two men who carried out the New Year's Day attacks share several striking similarities. Both are Army vets reportedly deployed to the same Army base.
Once again, social media is forcing the clout-chasing fake news to tell the damn truth. Social media is forcing them. People have already told them, and y'all know damn well these people was at the same military bases. Y'all better report that.
Fort Bragg, North Carolina, now known as Fort Liberty. Both chose to act on New Year's Day within hours of each other. Both drove electric trucks, and they rented them from the same car rental app, Turo.
There are so many things that are crisscrossing. These are coincidences that really should cause pause.
If these turned out to be simply similarities, very strange similarities to have.
But today, the FBI says they have yet to find a connection.
At this point, there is no definitive link.
The surprise attacks came after a night of joyous national celebrations welcoming in the new year. Cops have named the Vegas suspect as Matthew Livelsberger, a 37-year-old Green Beret on leave from active duty in Germany. We found this video of Livelsberger and his ex-wife Sarah, a social worker, waiting at an airport for a red-eye flight to New York in 2016.
We're on our way.
Police say Livelsberger drove 12 hours through the night from his home in Colorado Springs to Las Vegas, stopping twice to recharge the truck's battery. The interior of the Tesla Cybertruck is like no other vehicle on the road. You are surrounded by glass, and the steering wheel is rectangular shaped. The monitor here controls everything with a touch screen, and it's pretty comfortable and easy to drive. Cops say that the suspect drove around Vegas for an hour before pulling up outside the Trump International Hotel. New surveillance video released today shows the suspect arriving in Las Vegas and driving up to the hotel. He was parked for just 17 seconds before cops say he detonated the homemade bomb in the trunk. It was made from gas canisters and large fireworks. This is where the explosives were stored, in the bed of the truck. And because it's built like a tank, the explosion was contained, directing the blast upwards. Remarkably, the explosion did little damage to the glass lobby of the Trump Hotel. The Cybertruck itself was engulfed in flames, but was left pretty much intact. Tesla boss Elon Musk proudly boasted. The evil knuckleheads picked the wrong vehicle for a terrorist attack. So why did he use a Cybertruck? The answer seems obvious.
The idea of getting the Elon Musk signature car and bringing it to the gold Trump sign in Las Vegas, it really suggests he's trying to send a message.
President-elect Trump is reacting to the targeting of his Vegas hotel today. The USA is breaking down. A violent erosion of safety, national security, and democracy is taking place.
And Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about the New Year's Day attacks, one in New Orleans, one in Las Vegas. And before I go any further into the names of the suspects and possible motives and the way that these attacks were carried out, before I get into that, I got to say there were at least 15 deceased in New Orleans and over 30 injured. So may they rest in peace, and prayers out to their families. Any of you guys who are still injured in the hospital, hey, I wish you a speedy recovery. No one deserves to just be out there minding their business on Bourbon Street and have an F-150 plow through them for no reason at all. Okay, nobody deserves that. Now, before we go too far into it, just a couple things about what happened. Now, in New Orleans, a guy had an F-150 Lightning that was rented from an app called Turo. That matters in a minute. He rammed his vehicle through people right there on Bourbon Street with an ISIS flag on the back of his pickup. And again, it was a rented vehicle from the app called Turo. Now, in Vegas, a guy was in the Tesla truck and he put a bunch of things in the back, gas canisters, fireworks. I guess the objective was to have the vehicle completely blow up and for the lithium-ion battery to become a bomb, but I don't think that was the case. I think all the stuff in the back blew up, but the vehicle itself was still intact. All right. Now, the guy was inside of the vehicle when it happened, so I presume he's dead. I've not seen the body. You probably don't want to see the body the way it is right now. Now, Joe Biden spoke about what's happening. He did come out. I was kind of surprised. I'm like, okay, they rolled Joe out of the bed. Okay, let's hear from Joe. Then we're going to get into articles, videos, everything else about what's happening here, the suspects' names, and their possible connection. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it. And of course, everything I'm talking about will be in the box if you want to see it and hear it without my commentary. If you're on IG, visit a link in the bio, go to the corresponding article on the website. But without further ado, now let's go ahead and roll it.
We're tracking the explosion of a cyber truck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Law enforcement and the intelligence community are investigating this as well, including whether there's any possible connection with the attack in New Orleans. Thus far, there's nothing to report on that score at this time. I directed my team to make sure every resource is made available to federal, state, and local law enforcement to complete the investigation in New Orleans quickly and to make sure there is no remaining threat to the American people.
All right, so that's him. That's all we got so far. Maybe there may be more by the time you see this video, but that's all I have so far. Now, let's look at the actual explosion of the Cybertruck, okay? There's no sound here because there's no sound of the actual explosion in this video, but check it out. You can see there's the Trump Hotel, no casino in Las Vegas. The truck's right in front. Now, you're going to see in a minute just somebody sitting right there. Thankfully, they hopefully they move out of the way at a certain point. All right. So you can see the person was able to run. And now, if you notice, the actual integrity of the vehicle is still there. And you can also notice when it explodes, you see like fireworks and that kind of thing, because that's what was in the back. Gas canisters, fireworks, anything that would explode was back there. Okay, now this is the remainder of the vehicle. You can see it's still pretty much intact. The wheels are there. The actual frame, the what's that? The aluminum, I guess, on the side. All of that's pretty much intact. You can see all this garbage in the back. That's where gas canisters and fireworks and everything else was. And the doors of the Trump Tower here are still fine. They're not broken. I don't even see any kind of damage at all. This is glass. So for your vehicle to be packed with explosives in the back and a lithium-ion battery to be right there, it wasn't actually that much damage. And I don't think the battery was compromised. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. And you can see again, the doors of the Trump Hotel completely 100% intact, but the vehicle exploded within itself, and the explosion pretty much went up rather than outward because of the way the body is constructed with the aluminum. All righty. Now, let's check this out.
On that stunning Cybertruck explosion that happened outside Trump International Hotel on the Vegas Strip.
See, look, you can see that's from inside of the actual hotel, and you can see how the doors are totally fine as the explosives and whatnot in the back of the truck bed burn.
New Year's Day. 3 senior law enforcement officials briefed on the case, telling NBC News it's being investigated as a potential act of terrorism. and with questions arising over possible ties to the attack in New Orleans.
We're absolutely investigating any connectivity to what happened in New Orleans, as well as other attacks that have been occurring around the world. We're not ruling anything out yet.
NBC News learning investigators are looking into a possible military connection between the New Orleans suspect and the person inside the Tesla, according to 2 law enforcement sources. Authorities also confirming the vehicles involved in both incidents were rented from the car-sharing company Turo.
Now, this is the thing they've been talking about a lot. And I was watching this live on my stream last night. Shout out to you guys who were there. And I'm like, why do they keep mentioning Turo? Why is that a thing? Because there have been rented vehicles used in crimes before. But I think there's too many connections here to ignore this. I don't think that Turo specifically matters. I think that they could have planned to do this and they said, hey, let's use Turo. That might have just been what they said as far as their planning, if there was any kind of coordination, because I think these guys did know each other. The guy in Vegas and the guy in New Orleans.
The company saying in a statement they're heartbroken by the violence and are actively partnering with law enforcement authorities as they investigate both incidents. Yesterday, authorities also revealing.
So you see all the stuff back there, gas canisters, fireworks, all that. That's what the explosion was. But the actual integrity of the vehicles pretty much intact. All right, now let's get down to the nitty gritty. Did these guys know each other? Okay, so the person on the left, that is Matthew Livelsberger, and the guy on the right is Samsudeen Jabbar. Now, Samsudeen Jabbar is a suspect behind the New Orleans attack. All right, and you see the headline here. Did Cybertruck bomber Matthew Livelsberger and New Orleans attacker Samsudeen Jabbar plan their attacks together? Now, Matthew Livelsberger is 37, Samsudeen Jabbar is 42.
Oh,
they're
handlers at that military base planned it and they gave them the details to carry out. Them two never had to sit down with one another. Never. But they was on their base together and they both from their base. But they never had to sit down and coordinate these attacks and nothing like that. All they needed was the handler to do it.
He served at Fort Bragg at the same time. They went to Afghanistan at the same time. Jabbar enlisted in 2007, Livelsberger 2006. If these guys served at the same time at the same base and were deployed to Afghanistan at the same time, I think they knew each other.
Come on.
And here is
a terrorist attack on the same day. Come on, that's absolutely not a fucking coincidence.
Video of Samsudeen Jabbar barreling down the street. Let me turn the sound down just because. But you can see now nobody will be hurt in this clip. Just to let you know, as he goes further up the street, that's when the hurt happens. All right, so you can see him just barely missing people right here with the F-150, and you can see the flagpole right there in the back. And this is an F-150 Lightning, if I didn't mention that. So you have a Tesla Cybertruck, electric truck, an F-150 Lightning, an electric truck, rented by guys who probably knew each other, using the same app, probably because they were communicating with each other about how to do it, when to do it, and whatnot. All right. Maybe he wanted a Cybertruck but couldn't find one and decided to use the F-150 Lightning instead. All right, let's learn a little bit more about Samsudeen Jabbar here.
As victims' families begin the mourning process, as they are forced to now bury their loved ones to start the new year, we're getting a clearer picture of who this killer was. An American, a veteran, but someone with financial troubles apparently drawn to the terror group ISIS. Tonight, new video from New Orleans showing a crowded Bourbon Street full of New Year's revelers dancing in the road just as an apparent ISIS-inspired terrorist drove a pickup truck.
Now, I just want to say one thing. There was supposed to be, or there are steel bollards that can come up from the ground that you put up to stop this kind of traffic from coming through. If you know people are going to be partying, they're going to be drinking, it's New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, you want to put those bollards up so the trucks can't come through. It was witness who said that they had these plastic little barriers that are not going to stop anything.
They made sure
it's more of just a pedestrian suggestion rather than an actual barrier for trucks.
Through the crowd, killing 15 people and injuring dozens more. Less than 24 hours later, we're beginning to piece together who the killer was. 42-year-old Samsudeen Jabbar was a U.S.-born citizen from Texas and an Army veteran. Court records show he was divorced 3 times, forced to pay child support to 2 of those women.
This is the craziest part that I never once, after ISIS or Al Qaeda or any terrorist strike, I have never heard them. How many divorces did Osama bin Laden have? What was the financial stability like? I mean, they're trying to set up a reason where, see, this the reason that he did it, because he was just tired of his wife. He was going into bankruptcy. Y'all, that ain't got nothing to do with nothing.
And hard up for money, couldn't afford his mortgage.
Now, let's talk about something else, though. Samsudeen Jabbar. You heard my man say, born and raised Texas. Okay, cool. U.S. citizen. But where are his parents from? We're talking about, look at his name. Is that his new name that he gave himself? Or is that the name that he now identifies with because of his ancestry? I'm thinking you might be some kind of East African, some kind of Somali, growing up in the West, immigrant parents. You're easily a target of radicalization because you already got some of the Islamic background from your parents, from your family back in Sudan or wherever you came from. That could be what's happening.
They can't see he fell for it. Don't let that throw you. See, if you fall for, well, it's because of the Islamic nature, Islamic State. Well, what the hell the white boy doing blowing up in front of Trump Tower? Huh? Is he Islamic State too? Don't fall for the BS. That's the cover story for why the CIA and his handlers decided to have him kill all them people. See, this man identified with the Islamic State. What? You crazy. What about the other psychopath who was active U.S. military who just came from Germany? Was he down with Islamic State too? Hell no.
What's happening here? You got radicalized and then committed a terror attack, which we've seen before in this country.
Sometime in the last few years, it appears he was drawn to the terror group ISIS.
That mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill.
Authorities say Din Jabbar was speeding down Bourbon Street wearing body armor and firing an AR-style rifle out of the truck, mowing people down for about 3 blocks before crashing, stepping out and opening fire again, wounding 2 police officers. Authorities returning fire, shooting and killing him. This image showing Din Jabbar's body laying next to the truck. Inside that Ford F-150, authorities say they found multiple homemade pipe bombs packed with nails. Sources telling ABC News on that flagpole wrapped in a gray jacket was an ISIS flag. The carnage he left behind left witnesses scarred for life.
The screams, I mean, you can't think about, unhear that.
What we saw was insanity. I mean, something out of a movie. The graphic nature of it.
And tonight we begin to learn more about the victims.
Now, there's more here. They get into the victims. I don't want to discount their stories, but you can learn more about who was affected. I'll link to everything in the box. Now, just for time's sake, I want to get to one last piece. Now, it's just a coincidence, I suppose, but the New Orleans police chief used to be in Spokane, Washington, and also Oakland as their police chief. I suppose she got fired from Oakland, from what I'm reading. Now she's in New Orleans. And last year, 2024, in August, she hit 2 pedestrians with her vehicle. And it was no big deal. Oops, sorry. Let's watch this.
Hearing now from NOPD Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick for the first time about a weekend crash where she hit 2 people.
Well, Kirkpatrick was returning home at the time after visiting an injured officer at the hospital when she hit a man and a woman at the intersection of Decatur and Iberville Streets Saturday night. She said she made a terrible mistake and she's already reached out to the victims.
I did call the 2 young people yesterday and left a message. I asked if I could come and bring them flowers and personally apologize again, although I did on the scene. And we haven't made that connection and they may not be comfortable.
And Kirkpatrick took a breathalyzer test and urine analysis. The breathalyzer returned a blood alcohol concentration of 0.00%.
So 0.0 on the urine test. You believe that? Hey, Chief, take a urine test and it'll come back 100% honest, I promise. Okay, maybe she wasn't drinking, I don't know, but you hit 2 pedestrians right there on the street back in August 24, and now this happens, and you had the plastic barriers. I don't know. It's just too many things here. Just kind of strange. You got the Airbnb Turo connection. You got this police chief who probably shouldn't really be there. Why was that area not blocked off? Look, as I close, I want to say this again. Rest in peace to all those who died, and prayers out to the family. What I want to know is, why wasn't the security around this area better? You got to steal ball arts in the ground. Why not just use them? Why not use vehicles? Like down here where I live, when they do the Iron Man or a car show or anything like that, if they want to block downtown off because they got a lot of foot traffic, what they're going to do, they're going to put bollards up. They're going to put the Jersey wall concrete barriers. They're going to put fire trucks with the lights on and the ladder raised up, all of that. So you can't just drive your vehicle through there. If you're able to get through all of that, then you must be driving like some kind of Soviet World War II tank. I don't know. You can't just get your F-150 Lightning or your Cybertruck into actual security that's in place. So I don't know what's going on with this whole situation. You shouldn't be able to drive down there at all in these narrow streets with everybody outside partying. But hey, they were able to, and this is the result. And I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? What's your opinion about what happened here in New Orleans?
More breaking news to tell you about. We're now learning the man connected to the rental of the Cybertruck that exploded outside of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas is a U.S. Special Forces soldier. Surveillance video shows the moment a Tesla Cybertruck exploded. Police say the driver detonated a combination of fireworks, gas tanks, and camping fuel. The FBI now working to figure out whether this was indeed an act of terrorism. The driver was killed and at least 7 people were injured. And CNN's Natasha Chen joins us now from Las Vegas. Natasha, some very interesting information coming in from our Haley Britsky over at the Pentagon about the man connected to the rental of this Cybertruck. What more are you learning?
Right, Jim. Well, Haley has confirmed in just the last few minutes that he is an active duty U.S. Special Forces soldier assigned to 10th Special Forces Group, according to 4 U.S. officials, that he holds the rank of Master Sergeant, a senior enlisted rank, these officials said. 3 officials said he was on active duty serving in Germany, and he was on leave when this happened on New Year's Day. He has not been identified publicly, and authorities are still trying to work out whether this was a terrorist attack. Now, just to recap a little bit of what happened behind us just 24 hours ago, approximately, there are still police presence here around the valet area of where you pull into the Trump International Hotel just off of the Vegas Strip. This Cybertruck that he allegedly was rented from Colorado from the Turo rental platform. Authorities say that he drove it here to Las Vegas by 7:30 a.m. on New Year's Day, that he drove up and down the Strip, and then about an hour before the explosion drove past the Trump Hotel as well. And police did make note that the damage was really limited because of the body construction of this Tesla Cybertruck, saying that, you know, the front glass of the Trump Hotel behind us did not even suffer any damage. The driver inside did die from this explosion. There were 7 other people injured, Jim.
All right, Natasha Chen, get back to us if you hear anything else. We really appreciate it. For more on this, CNN's chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst John Miller joins us now. John, let's start with this new information coming in from our Haley Britsky over at the Pentagon. How shocking is this, that this was an active duty soldier? To me, I mean, the fact that this was a U.S. Special Forces soldier assigned to the 10th Special Forces Group, I mean, that tells us that this individual had some expertise if he is indeed the person who was inside the Cybertruck in addition to renting it.
Well, this is information we first reported last night, that he was a U.S. Special Forces operator. The fact that he's active duty on leave from Germany is just something that sets him apart in so many ways from the terrorist profile we've become accustomed to in these attacks, and raises real questions as to what was this event in Las Vegas? Was it an attack on the building? Was it a calculated suicide? but his training for a 36-year-old, 19-year veteran, active duty U.S. military, Green Beret, special operations training, risk management and vulnerability certification, intelligence operations. This really sets him apart in terms of a higher level of training and capability than anyone we would have seen in a similar attack. So again, Jimmy, goes back to the question of what was this? The idea of getting the Elon Musk signature car and bringing it to the gold Trump sign in Las Vegas, driving from Colorado Springs. It really suggests he's trying to send a message with visualization, but he allegedly, if he is the same person whose body was found in that car, they still haven't been able to identify that body, but they know who rented the car. If he is the individual inside, apparently he chose to press that detonator and then remain inside as this conflagration went out.
Right. I mean, there is the symbolism that you just referenced, John, in driving a Tesla Cybertruck up to the Trump Hotel in Vegas and blowing it up. There's also this connection, this potential, I suppose, military connection between this individual in Las Vegas and what took place in New Orleans. And I mean, I know we don't have any established connections or that we know about publicly at this point from official sources. But what do you make of that potential connection? I mean, that sounds like too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence.
As a former senior member of the Joint Terrorism Task Force, both in New York and Los Angeles, the idea that you've got two people with military backgrounds, one former, one active, that they go to the same off-brand rental car company, the Toro company, to rent these exotic vehicles, that they both do attacks in tourist locations on a holiday, is the kind of coincidence that you can't say has meaning, but you can't ignore it. So you go into the investigation saying, well, let's disprove it. Let's investigate our way through it and find out if we can validate it or put it aside. But you certainly can't ignore it. Too many factors there.
The FBI is working to determine whether the Tesla Cybertruck explosion earlier today is possibly connected to the New Orleans attack. Here's the moment. Police say fireworks, gas tanks, and camping fuel were detonated in the bed of this vehicle. The FBI also trying to figure out whether it was an act of terrorism. Local police spoke to the glaring possibility of a connection between Trump Tower and the car produced by Elon Musk's company.
Well, I mean, it's a Tesla truck, and we know that Elon Musk is working with President-elect Trump, and it's the Trump Tower. So there's obviously things to be concerned about there, and that's something we continue to look at. The fact that this was a Cybertruck really limited the damage that occurred inside of the valet, because it had most of the blast go up through the truck and out. In fact, if you look on that video, you'll see that the front glass doors at the Trump hotel were not even broken by that blast.
CNN's Veronica Miracle has more details on the investigation for you.
Our John Miller is telling us he has spoken to multiple law enforcement officials who say that the driver of the Cybertruck has a military background. Now, law enforcement officials say they know the name of this driver who died in the explosion, but they are not going to be releasing the identity of that driver until they notify the next of kin. We understand that this driver was in Las Vegas for a
Yesterday, we did an update on the then breaking news of a terrorist attack in New Orleans that killed quite a number of people and injured scores of others. And then what we've actually found out also subsequent to that was that just hours later, there was another apparent terror attack in Las Vegas, which we're going to get to that in a minute. There's some interesting correlations between the two, but also some significant differences between them as well. But first of all, let's stick with the most important one, because it had the biggest casualty produced and the one that most people are really, really interested in. And there have been some additional information, some additional positive notes have come out from the FBI about what happened. They've said some things that they now know are true, and then they have corrected some things that they said initially were not accurate. At least that's what they're saying right now. Here is the latest from the FBI out of New Orleans.
At this point, currently, and this is another fact I want to be clear on, we do not assess at this point that anyone else involved in this attack except for Shamsa Din Jabbar, the subject you've already been briefed on. As for a timeline, at this point, investigators believe Jabbar picked up the rented F-150 in Houston, Texas on December 30th. He then drove from Houston to New Orleans on the evening of the 31st, and he posted several videos to an online platform proclaiming his support for ISIS. There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer. He also provided a will and testament.
So the first thing that obviously jumps out, that this is definitely somebody who was motivated by the ISIS ideology. Now, certainly one of the things that's going to be have to be answered here in the very near future is how he got radicalized by this group. What was happening in the months and years before this? Is this something that had been slow rolling? Was this something that was new? And then, of course, one of the most important things we need to find out, like right away, was how did anyone from ISIS get hold of him, or actually even did anyone from ISIS? So far, they have not said that, other than that he was pro-ISIS. You heard he made 5 videos there that he had posted really on his trip, kind of chronicling what happened and what his motivations were to, quote, harm the infidels, etc., the unbelievers, as he called them. That certainly sounds like a lot of the rhetoric that we've heard out of ISIS really from the beginning, going all the way back to when they were Al-Qaeda in Iraq in 2005. And I guess even Al-Qaeda before that is AQI was an offshoot of the bin Laden's Al-Qaeda. So you see these things keep morphing into different things, and then other ISIS becomes Al-Nusra, and then those become like the terrorist god who now is taking over in Syria. So you see there's a lot of connective tissue between that ideology. It continues to move forward. But the issue here that the United States needs to understand is, how did this radicalization happen? And were there any signs that were out there? Because we have to make sure that we have our intelligence capabilities focused on the domestic front, and that we are able to monitor and observe anything that may happen that can give signs that can allow us to intercept these events before they happen. Obviously, we have, especially since 9/11, substantially improved our capacity to interdict terrorist strikes from overseas, originating from overseas, and we've been doing quite well at that, like extremely good. Nothing is ever foolproof, and there have been a few things that slipped through the cracks and got through a couple of times, but a handful in the last nearly 25 years now. But we have to also take a look at the self-radicalized, the people who were on the inside of the country who may strike from within, so they don't come from outside. So we're good at the one thing, but we've got to be good at more than one thing at a time. And of course, it's also true that we have to be careful that we don't go so far. And I'm a big advocate of this. Is we can't erode our liberties so much that we start spying on Americans and saying, oh, well, in the name of security, we have to, impose and get more into the lives of Americans. And that's always a double-edged sword. And it's something you have to find a careful balance between, because it is necessary. It is necessary to make sure we stay safe, and we use whatever means we can to identify any red flags that may come up, but that we just don't go so far, because it can be those powers can be all too easily abused. Then actually start spying on other people and for uses far beyond, national security. So we'll just have to monitor those as well. One of the other things that the FBI also talked a little bit more about was that he said that there were no accomplices. And here's the second part.
We want to be transparent with the public. Years of the FBI not being transparent. We're being as transparent as we possibly can. And unfortunately, as we're being transparent, unfortunately for that, there is some information that we have to go back and recorrect. And in this particular incident, you heard the resources that we brought, that the other state and locals have brought. We've had 24 hours now to go through media, to go through phones, to interview people, to analyze those videos, analyze other databases. And after all of that, there's been hundreds and hundreds of leads done just in 24 hours. We're confident at this point that there is no accomplices. And I'll give you an idea of how that information sometimes, a lot of the early reports came out that there were extra people that were setting the coolers down, right? It turns out those were just patrons on the street that were looking inside the coolers, right? Well, we didn't know that at first, so we had to kind of track all that down and put that to rest. So I do want to address the suicide vest question. I want to kill that one right away. Okay. There was no evidence that the subject was wearing a suicide vest at all. So what I can tell you right now is that he was 100% inspired by ISIS. And so we're digging through more of the social media, more interviews, working with some of our other partners to ascertain just how to ascertain a little bit more about that connection.
Okay, a couple of things I want to point out about that clip right there. When I was during my time in the Army, both in training as well as in combat, one of the rules of thumb that we often use that you've probably heard is that the first report is almost always wrong. Things are so chaotic in the first period of time after contact that people are given the reports up the line in the combat environment, to where you're reporting what you're seeing, but you're not seeing everything clearly. You're only seeing isolated parts here. You don't have time to see all the information. So you report what's up. And the people back in the command center, they get all this information and they see things and they get one idea. But then as time goes on, and now then you can stop and you can think and you can look and, oh, also over here, and, oh, I didn't tell you about that over there. Then the picture gets put together. And very oftentimes the initial one is skewed in what's really going on, and it gets corrected over time. This situation has some similarities to that, and he is right. And what he's saying about being transparent, that we want to say, hey, this is what we initially heard, this is what we thought, but now then we've come up with some additional information. That per se is fine and normal. What slightly causes me some concern, though, is how fast they have shifted from there were, and the initial report was 4 accomplices, up to 4 accomplices, to now there are no accomplices in 24 hours.
Yeah,
well, listen, if the first reports are often wrong, it's going to take time to ascertain what's going on. What you can say is that, well, those 3 people those other 4 people that we thought were accomplices actually aren't, because we've identified them and dismissed them as a potential suspect. That would be fair, and that would be good if that was true. But to say there were no accomplices would imply that you've done some study and research, et cetera, and it's way, way, way too early to categorically state that there were no accomplices. So it just worries me a little, I'll just be honest, when I hear that them say so, like, yeah, it's done, don't look anymore. It was just this one guy right here. That's it. And yeah, you can see that Gary is showing some, video here. This is actually the guy that did it. And wow, we need to find out about, what's going on with this guy, because there's so much that's still unknown, especially about to his motivations. Why would by all accounts, this is a good looking guy right here. He's a professional. He's got good experience, served his country, et cetera. So there's, just on the surface of it, you're like, wow, what would cause this guy to be so radicalized that he would, not just take his own life and basically suicide by cop, but, kill so many people in the process. And, what did he hope to accomplish? Because it's a big change. I can just tell you, from having served on active duty in the Army, to go from where we are, which is to defend our country, to defend each other, and to go after radical terrorists, and you see them out there, to then go and literally support and help those exact same terrorists against our own people. That is a radical shift in personality. And so there's no way that this wouldn't leave a long trail. And so the expectation is that both media as well as probably local and federal law enforcement officials will over time be doing some investigations and analysis to start uncovering. So you can expect to see a lot of this is going to start showing how over time this happened. That's going to be really important. So potentially we can use that information to identify anyone else who may be earlier in the process and maybe get them some help if that's the case, or just outright prevent it from happening. Then there was we're going to show a third part of that same conversation today, because it also came up in the context of this, that in case you may not have heard, there was actually now a second terrorist event that happened ironically, we think ironically anyway, just a matter of hours later in Las Vegas. And Gary, if you can throw that headline up there, there has been another Army guy who in Las Vegas in the Cybertruck. You may have heard that there was some uncertainty about whether this was a terrorist attack or whether it was just an accident, et cetera. It now appears clear that this was an intentional act where someone tried to blow him. This guy's name is Laversberger, a 19-year Army career in the Special Forces. And he was serving in a place called Fort Liberty, used to be called Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Had also been in Afghanistan, which I think is where this picture was taken. And there's some interesting correlations between the two, that they both apparently were serving at one point or another at Fort Liberty, though it is unclear if they were actually there at the same time. It does appear that they were in Afghanistan around the same time during the Obama surge. We don't know yet whether they actually knew each other, whether there's any coordination between those two or not. But the fact that there were some similarities, both, one a veteran, one an active duty military personnel in the U.S. Army, both had been stationed in similar places. There was some question of, hey, was there any coordination between these two? So the FBI addressed that.
We are following up on all potential leads and not ruling everything out. However, at this point, there is no definitive link between the attack here in New Orleans and the one in Las Vegas. And again, I'll preface everything with what I started with in the beginning, which was this is very early in an investigation like this.
Fair enough. It's early. So again, I just would hesitate. And if I was counseling these folks, don't be categorical in anything you say. Just say that up to there's no evidence so far that there was any connection between the two attacks, but we're continuing to investigate. That's fine. But anyway, Casey calls me, I'll give him some advice. Want to look at some of the interesting things about the second one, though, because that hadn't gotten as much information here. A guy named Laversberger. Interesting that first he said there are some similarities besides what I already told you. Also, this is very interesting. Both of these folks rented these vehicles through the Turo app. And if you're not familiar with that, that's almost like the where you can do a Airbnb, where you can rent someone's house when you go to some place as opposed to a hotel. Well, likewise, instead of going through Hertz or Avis or whatever rental car, you can go through individuals who have their vehicles for use rental in that area. Both of these guys on the same day used the Turo app to get a vehicle to commit a crime. So that's kind of I have not heard of that happening before. I'm sure it probably has, but it's very interesting that that seems to be a new path forward to these folks here. The second one is that they were both in Afghanistan around the same time, both at Fort Bragg / Fort Liberty. Laversberger was a Green Beret, so this is not some kind of ne'er-do-well. Not somebody who had nothing to lose. So far, there's no evidence at all. In fact, zero that Laversberger had any ISIS connections, had intended to do any harm to anybody. He was, from what's been reported so far, he was actually a Trump supporter. Initial reports said that he may have been a Trump opponent, and that's why he chose the Trump hotel there to attack. But now then the information is coming out that no, to the contrary, he was a Trump supporter, which only deepens the mystery a little bit, is then why he chose a Trump hotel to take this action. Also, according to apparently his wife has been interviewed, and apparently they had some sort of falling out on, I believe it was New Year's Eve or something. There was some, according to what's been written there, some question about a what was it? An infidelity dispute was the term that they used there. It wasn't clear whether he had been accused of cheating or she had been accused of cheating, something like that. But anyway, they had a big argument, and then he left. And so he went and rented the vehicle. He had a couple of firearms in the vehicle as well, and obviously some sort of explosive devices. It is unclear whether he intended to harm anyone or whether it was, frankly, a spectacular way to take his own life, given the fact that there was some sort of domestic dispute. There's some evidence that it could have been in the latter. One of the things that we also need to find, and so far they said that there's so much damage on the vehicle, they have yet to be able to do adequate forensics as to what kind of explosives were used. Was it something that was supposed to have a catastrophic impact, something that was supposed to blow up and hurt a lot of people or the hotel, or was it something that was basically designed to just destroy the vehicle? Of course, we don't know what his motivation or intention in either one of those things would have been, or why he chose to drive from, I believe it was Colorado, where he was stationed, all the way up to Las Vegas, why that was the choice. So a whole lot of things that are unclear about this, a lot of things we don't understand of what's intended, et cetera. But that's kind of where we are right now. So I wanted to bring you up to date on those two things, look at the similarities, the differences, and to just be honest about what we know and what we don't. And of course, we'll keep you updated as we get more information. Now, I want to turn, though, before we close out this episode here, onto kind of the constant ramifications of this. What results we should pull from this, or understandings, et cetera. And what we have to, again, I think, be very careful about is not, go overboard with any kind of actions based on what happened to try to prevent it again, et cetera. And then also just this whole issue about terrorism and domestic terrorism and what we should do about it. There have been a lot of movements, especially in the current administration here. You may recall, especially before the election and the years leading up to the election, there was a lot of focus on right-wing terror threats in the United States. And there was also lots of information about because people crossing into the border, some of them may have been ISIS affiliated. A lot of that was going through the media. That's also been in the media a lot. I'll talk about that part in a second. But first of all, we got to make sure that we don't go in a wrong direction either. And I want to show you this clip from President Biden in 2021, who seemed that maybe the administration was focused on the wrong aspects of terrorism in the U.S.
According to the intelligence community, terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today. Not ISIS, not Al Qaeda, white supremacists. That's not me. That's the intelligence community under both Trump and under my administration.
Yeah, but see, that's a little bit suspect. How many so-called right-wing terrorist attacks have happened in the United States since July 1st of 2021? I'm not aware of any. Maybe there's been some acts of violence I'm not aware of, but I certainly am not aware of any right-wing terrorist attacks that have happened. But now then, here's one that was from a sponsored ISIS terrorist from abroad, or at least their mentality, that was someone that was already here. So on the other side, you see a lot of people, especially on the right, are saying, see, this is open borders issues, and this is what we've been warning about. There's been all these people coming in, and lots of evidence and headlines have suggested that, in fact, there have been a lot of people associated with God only knows who. And look, I am all for 100% for controlling our borders, all of our borders here. I think that whatever you want to do with immigration is an open question, and there's lots of room for debate. We should have this many, we should have that many, we should limit to this or that. All fair game. Those are policy issues that can be decided upon. What shouldn't be a policy issue, and it shouldn't even be a debate, is to keep the border safe. That we should say whatever our laws are, whatever our policies are, then nobody should come into the country unless it follows our laws. And if they don't, they should be prevented out. Because, listen, there could be some correlation between the two events that happened in Las Vegas. I'm sorry, not Las Vegas, in New Orleans. Because this guy was motivated by an ideology that is terrorist related and hates anybody that's not like them. And so he took action to potentially kill somebody, which we know, of course, ISIS is one of those key things there. We need to be sure and keep those kinds of people out of the country and identify anybody who follows that inside of our country. But look, if we don't secure the borders, there's all kinds of people from all over the world. And listen, we also have to understand and admit that a lot of this hate reformist is in part because of some of our policies. And while we do need to keep control of the border, period, no full stop, no caveats, we also have to keep ourselves safe by not giving any reason for others to want to kill us. Now, some things you just can't help. There's haters out there. There's people that are violent. They're going to do whatever they can. You can't do anything about that. That's why you need a secure border. That's why you need a national security force. That's why you need domestic police forces, FBI, and all that. All that has its place. But there's also a place for having wise policies. These are some of the reasons why I say so often that some of our policies, by having our troops in Syria, since I think 2014, when Obama first put them in there and they were never taken out under either the Trump or the Biden administration, this is the cause. I keep saying it's a strategic vulnerability. It's that for many reasons. And one of them is, just imagine this, folks. So the current administration, despite Trump wanting to get them out in 3 times in his tenure, in the first tenure, never succeeded, never did it, never gave the command, let it go on to the next administration. They just kept it there. We have been saying, and you've seen me on this show several times, show clips of the senior administration officials emphatically, like Admiral John Kirby, who said, no, this is a really important thing. We're on this enduring defeat of ISIS mission and blah, blah, blah. So what they're doing there, and you may see periodic headlines where they come on and they say, yes, we've taken out this ISIS leader, that ISIS leader. What do you think ISIS is going to do when we are constantly there, overtly saying we're killing you guys all over the place? There's, by estimates, somewhere around 10,000, maybe even more, people who have various affiliations with ISIS in Syria, Iraq, and parts of Jordan, probably elsewhere in the Middle East, but at least in those places. And they sit there and they see that we are overtly trying to kill them, especially their leaders. And periodically we do. Do you think that ISIS is going to just sit back and say, well, shucks, they got another one of ours, I guess we'll just keep leaving them alone? There are some certainly who have this arrogant and badly misplaced belief that we'll just show them how tough we are, and we'll show them they can either stop doing what we don't want them or die in the process. Well, folks, that is as unrealistic as it can possibly be. They are already a radicalized group. Showing force against them is not going to, not only is it not going to diminish them, as I've personally seen throughout my time in both Iraq and Afghanistan when I was on active duty, it increases them. It gives them more motivation to continue fighting, to recruit, to get funding from other people who also don't like being killed all the time. And then it just makes them say, what can we do to finally get them? So they can't come here. That's why I say all the time, having those troops in Syria does not keep us safe here. As a matter of fact, more evidence is piling up that it makes us less safe here. Now, ISIS can't get here from overseas because we do have a very effective global ability to monitor and detect and interdict any kind of terrorist attacks before they ever get to our shores. There's a lot of that stuff that's been open source, and there's a lot that's classified, but I assure you it's robust and it's been very successful. But if they can't get in the front door, then they're going to look for a side door or a window or anything else, or come in through the roof, whatever. And this is one of the ways to try and find someone in the United States to radicalize them, to get them to take action from within. Now, again, this guy could have somehow become unstable, and maybe this is just a convenient excuse. I can't say for sure, but I can tell you for confidently that this is one of the methods that they try to do, that they try to radicalize people inside target countries. So it does us no good to continue to just have troops everywhere in the world constantly trying to kill all these so-called bad guys who don't pose any threat to us that we can't already handle from our existing defensive capacities, to just keep the troops there all the time. And it increases the hatred of us above what it's going to be anyway. You can't eliminate it because a lot of them truly do hate us because of who we are, but that number is not that big. Let's don't add to it by continuing these deployments that serve no value to the United States. They don't keep us safe. They do put our troops at risk, and they do leave them out there in the events that some get killed, that we eventually get drawn into a war in the Middle East, which is still a pervasive problem over there and a risk. Let's get all that stuff off the table, get our troops out of Syria, I hope that President Trump, when he comes in, finally just says, I should have done it the first time. I'm going to do it this time and going to reduce the risk to America. This is a positive thing. And I know, and I'll just call it out right now before it even happens. There's all these so-called neocons and these people who love war everywhere and love to put our troops everywhere and want more. They try to even want more in Syria. They're going to say, oh, you're a defeatist and you're withdrawing and you're retreating in the face of, that's BS. I'll just call that straight to your face. That is BS. There's no truth to it. In fact, there's overwhelming evidence to the opposite, that people who have this mentality get us into more trouble, get us into more wars, make us less secure and less safe. We need to understand that. When the next time you hear somebody say, oh, you just want to retreat and give a victory to the other, whoever it is, just understand that they're wrong, dead wrong. I don't know that they would be lying, because some of them actually believe this, but I can tell you authoritatively, they are dead wrong and will harm American national security if we keep listening to that kind of stuff. So, all right, I'll get off my soapbox here. So, but this goes a little bit further than just what happened in this time, because there are consequences to actions, whether you want them to be or not. There are consequences to actions. It's time for us to start having positive consequences. Love to see that. Listen, we're going to be back on this afternoon at I believe 3:30, where Ukraine is on the verge of military defeat. Things keep going south for the Ukraine side. And we're going to go into some
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kevin McMahill. I'm the sheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and we are collectively here this morning to give you an update on the Cybertruck explosion at the Trump Hotel on Las Vegas Boulevard yesterday. Our work never stopped. As many of you went to sleep last night, I just want to give you an update on a lot of what it is that we found through the processing of the Cybertruck. This is a joint investigation involving the FBI, the ATF, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and these folks worked through the night and found a lot of stuff that is very useful for this investigation. As you look at this Cybertruck here, we had to transport this down to our fleet services so that we could really get through this thing. And I remind you that the subject inside wasn't able to be removed for a very long period of time because he was burnt beyond recognition. And so as we continue to move through this.
Now, burnt beyond recognition, that right there, we remember that. When they talk about this investigation, when they telling us who was inside that truck, burnt beyond recognition. So they just going to tell us who was in that truck. We don't actually know if the guy that they're telling us is in that truck, or if he moving on to other classified jobs. You see what I'm saying? This active duty U.S. military officer. Is he going to get a new name and a new identity?
I'm going to talk a little bit about his identity and what we believe, but I would like to highlight a couple of things that the teams found inside of the Cybertruck that are useful to the investigation. And that first and foremost is a military identification. We also found a passport. We found a Desert Eagle 50 caliber semi-automatic pistol. And if you'll notice on a lot of these guns that we're going to talk about here, they're almost just burnt beyond recognition as well. There's a SLR model B30 semi-automatic firearm, number of fireworks that were still in the vehicle that had to be removed.
All props. What sense do it? He didn't shoot anybody with any of those weapons. They say he shot himself. So why did he have all those weapons in the car? Unless they want us to believe. See, this was Rambo. This was a Rambo type guy. You know, this is the guy who was in the U.S. military. Yeah, he tried to blow up Trump Tower, but what? Who is he? Where is he? I told you I want to see a video of that guy driving that motherfucking Tesla. Remember, they can zoom in, show us at a red light. The only thing they showing you is far away images saying this is him driving around Las Vegas. Man, we don't know who in there.
Notably, we found an iPhone and a smartwatch, and then several credit cards were also in the name of our subject. Our subject is 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger. He's of Colorado Springs, Colorado, born July 22nd of 1987. Now, as you'll see here on a picture of his driver's license, let's see, the question really still remains for me, and I know that there's a lot of you folks in the media that are identifying this person as the person in our vehicle. As I mentioned to you already, his body is burnt beyond recognition, and I do still not have confirmation 100% that that is the individual that was inside of our vehicle.
Okay, okay. You know you don't believe it yourself. Well, why are you telling us that was him? Why is the government telling us this guy was in that vehicle when the chief just told you, well, I really don't know that was him. But that's whose name rented this Tesla, all right? Ain't that what they're going to tell us? This guy's credit cards, this guy's... So you're saying somebody used this man's identity and it's a dead body in the vehicle, but y'all don't know who really in the vehicle. Okay, where is this guy at? This commando, this special trained NATO U.S. soldier, where is he at? You know, this guy right here could cause a lot of destruction in the U.S. They already think he dead.
So as I'm calling it now,
imagine that.
Subject or person of interest, I will not come back until I have the confirmation through DNA or medical records that this is indeed, in fact, the subject inside of the vehicle. Now, further complicating this identification of this individual, we also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle.
Now, pay attention to that. They're telling you a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation. Remember I told you that. Even if they did prove that's that guy dead in that car, that don't mean he did what they said he did, because that Tesla can automatically manual drive on its own. That just means somebody put that guy in that car. So now if you show me a video of this dude driving through Las Vegas, that don't mean he was alive. He could have already been dead. And when that Tesla, this new car pulled up to Trump Tower, they manually blew the car. We don't know that he did any of that shit that they talking about.
One of the handguns was found at his feet inside of the vehicle. Obviously, in how we're trying to identify him, and I'm feeling comfortable to give you this information, is a tremendous amount of substantial evidence to include he rented the Turo vehicle. There are two tattoos, one of which was on the stomach and one of which is on the arm, that we can see bits and pieces of it as in comparison to what it is that we now know he had on his body. That has given us a lot of confidence that this is, in fact, the same person, as well as which the clearly obvious, which is the credit cards, the military identification, the passport. And then furthermore, as you'll see here in just a very short period of time, we tracked his movements from Colorado to Las Vegas. And in a number of the photographs that we were able to determine, he was the individual that was driving the vehicle. And also, I'd like to iterate this point to you. We still have only ever seen him in this vehicle, and we're not aware of any other subjects involved in this particular case. Now, I would like to acknowledge a couple of things because I know what's going on in the social media world, and there are a number of things in this case that are similar to the attack in New Orleans. We do know that our subject here served in the military. In fact, he's a current member of the military. Both of the subjects served at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. What we do know about that is it's a very large military base, and we have no record that they served in the same unit or even at the same years at Fort Bragg, something that continues to remain under investigation.
Lies.
I also know that they both served in Afghanistan in 2009. We don't have any evidence that they were in the same province in Afghanistan, the same location, or the same unit. Again, something else that remains under investigation.
This is ridiculous. Both, one joined the military 1 year, the other one joined the next year. They was at Fort Bragg together. They was in Afghanistan together. I was waiting for him to say, like he said, Fort Bragg is a big military base. We don't know if they actually ran into each other. I was waiting for him to say Afghanistan, that's a big country. We don't know. Man, please, who y'all trying to fool, man?
And we also know, of course, that they both used.
Because remember, it's not about them two ever running into each other. It's about their handler,
the rental company Turo, to rent their vehicles. As far as his military background, it's been confirmed by DOD that he was indeed in the United States Army. He was also a Green Beret operations sergeant who spent most of his time at Fort Carson, Colorado, and in Germany. He was on approved leave from Germany, where he was serving with the 10th Special Forces Group. He was also previously in the National Guard and the Army Reserve. I'd like to point out to you that through exceptional joint investigative effort, we've gotten to a place where we believe we can show you his route to Las Vegas from Colorado, and Carlos will put up the map there for you. And we know that he rented the Cybertruck in Denver on December 28th. We tracked his movements through the Tesla charging stations to Monument, Colorado on December 30th. On the 31st of December, the truck was charged in Trinidad, Colorado, Las Vegas, New Mexico, and Albuquerque and Gallup, New Mexico. On January 1st, the truck was charged in Holbrook, Flagstaff, and Kingman, Arizona. We last tracked the truck in Kingman at 05:33 yesterday morning. The truck was first spotted in Las Vegas at 7:29 a.m. yesterday. And Carlos will pull up a picture of the truck pulling onto Fashion Show Drive here. And that picture was observed at about 7:34 a.m. We know that he pulled into the Trump Valet. I believe we have a video of that. You can see the Cybertruck highlighted there. So through extensive surveillance video, we were able to track him leaving there, and we know that he went to several different places along Las Vegas Boulevard, and he spent some time in a parking lot of a business near Flamingo and Las Vegas Boulevard. We didn't have a video of the truck pulling back onto Las Vegas Boulevard from the sands. See that there? That's north on the boulevard from Sands at 8:39, where he then immediately heads to the Trump Hotel, pulls into the valet area, and as of course you all know, the explosion occurs within 17 seconds of his arrival at the valet. There's some additional investigative updates that are going to be provided to you by a couple of the other speakers here, the first of which will be our special agent in charge of the FBI local office, Spencer Evans. Spencer.
Good morning. My name is Spencer Evans. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI's Las Vegas division. As the sheriff mentioned, we've been working through the night with our partners, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and other agencies, to gather all the facts and determine a motive to what was initially reported to the FBI as a bombing incident, to which our special agent bomb techs and others responded. Obviously, we're always concerned in these sorts of events to ascertain what the motive is. We understand that's everybody's at the forefront of everyone's thoughts. And so looking into exactly what the motivation is remains our number one priority. This is why the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force has been brought into play. The Joint Terrorism Task Force, most important part of that acronym is joint. It is done in concert with our partners, which are comprised of more than a dozen investigative agencies here throughout the state of Nevada. We've been working hand in glove, side by side, tirelessly to determine, is there any ongoing threat to the public, to identify the subject, to determine any potential connection to other events going on in the world, most notably in New Orleans, and then obviously to determine if there's anything else that we need to be tracking down. At this time, as the sheriff's pointed out, we feel that the subject has been identified, although not conclusively. waiting for DNA evidence on that front. However, we do feel like we have the subject identified, and at this time, there is no information about additional subjects that the FBI is tracking on. Our resources, as I mentioned, that have been deployed in support of this event include Special Agent Bomb Techs, our evidence response team, which is processing crime scenes, side by side with the forensics folks from Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, our investigators, our intelligence analysts, and then outside of the FBI Las Vegas field office, we have investigative leads that are being conducted by FBI field offices, both internationally and domestically as well. As always, when the FBI is involved with any sort of case like this, we ask for help for the public. Anyone with information related to this incident, we encourage you to please call 1-800-CALL-FBI, or you can submit a tip online at tips.fbi.gov. We've already received thousands of tips related to this incident. The challenge that we face moving forward is to separate those that are pertinent and relevant and those that can be verified for those from those that have not. For example, one of the tips that we received just today relates to information alluding to this subject's personal experiences related to his time and activity in the military. Again, that's unverified and uncorroborated, but one of many tips and leads that we will be following up in the days that come. If you have any additional information, again, encourage everyone, 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit it online, tips.fbi.gov. We will tirelessly work to exhaust all investigative leads and conclusively determine what the nature of this particular incident was, what the motivation was, and to the extent possible, share all that information as we obtain it. I'll now turn some time over to the Assistant Special Agent in charge from the ATF, Kenny Cooper.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kenny Cooper. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of ATF San Francisco Field Division. ATF is bringing our expertise in post-blast investigations and our crime gun intelligence to specifically assist in this investigation. I will tell you that our Special Agent Bomb Techs are working with FBI and with Las Vegas Metro and sifting through that post-blast debris to find components and investigative leads that will derive from that evidence process. We're too early into that investigation process to give any determination as far as how this device was initiated. I will say that we do know that the components primarily consist of fireworks, mortars, aerial shells, and are all consumer fireworks. Nothing commercial grade has been discovered at this point. And we've identified some fuel enhancers like the Coleman fuel and VP Racing fuel and some explosive targets that can be purchased at any sporting goods store. We've also, as the sheriff mentioned, we've identified 2 semi-automatic handguns recovered from the Tesla. We have successfully traced those firearms, and I can tell you that Matthew Livesberg lawfully purchased both of these firearms on December 30th, 2024. We have agents following up those investigative leads. We know exactly where those firearms were purchased, and we will share any developments from those leads as they come in. Thank you.
We also have the Clark County Fire Chief here, John Steinbeck, and he didn't have any additional updates, but if there's any questions in regards to what the fire department did during this, he's here to answer those questions as well. With that, I'd just like to say before I take a couple questions from all of you, you'll notice that we're not releasing information that we haven't corroborated and verified. We're very well aware of all of the things that are going around on social media. But that's just the way we're going to conduct this investigation. We're not putting it out until we can tell you for a fact what information it is that we're putting out. And so we're going to continue to do that. But I'm also confident to tell the Las Vegas community and this great nation that we don't believe there's any further threat from this subject or anybody associated to him here in Las Vegas. With that, Denise, I saw you had your hand up. If you could just identify yourself, please.
Did this suspect have any other connection to Las Vegas? Had he ever been here before or any reason to be here?
So the question was, did the subject have any ties to Las Vegas, or had he ever been here before? I do believe we had one instance a number of years ago where he stayed at a local hotel, but we still trying to verify that information as well. Sir.
And that'll route you to where you need to be to see the entire show. And the show airs every Monday through Friday. Freedom fighting doctor who risked it all. Head to TWC Quarter attack. This is the New Orleans French Quarter attack that happened really in the middle of the, I guess it was technically January 1st. It was kind of New Year's Eve. It was at 3:15 in the morning. So this deadly terrorist attack happened when, and I think right now we're at 14 fatalities, dozens more injured. The incident happened on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter at approximately 3:15. A rented white Ford F-150 Lightning truck driven by 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. Army veteran from Texas, plowed into crowds of New Year's revelers on Bourbon Street. Jabbar maneuvered around a police blockade, drove onto the sidewalk. He struck numerous pedestrians over a 3-block stretch. After crashing the vehicle, he exited and opened fire on the crowd and at responding police officers with an assault rifle and a handgun. I know a lot of you don't like the term assault rifles because, I mean, every weapon can be used for assault or not assaulting, right? But basically, it was an AR-style rifle and a handgun. I'm just giving you guys all of the details at the moment, and then we're going to kind of get into some of the deeper stuff on this. Law enforcement then returned fire at him. They killed him in the ensuing shootout. The attack resulted in at least 14 fatalities with dozens more injured. Among some of the confirmed victims, I do want to give you some of them. You know, you have to assume that on a New Year's Eve party like this at 3:15 in the morning, these are going to be younger people. Tiger Beck was 28 years old, a former all-Ivy Princeton football player. Nikra Cheyenne Dado was an aspiring nurse. We don't have her age, but probably young. Reggie Hunter, 37, a store manager, father of 2. I mean, these were just some of the people that were killed. Absolutely terrible, terrible way to end your life and for these families to start their New Year's. As of January 2nd, 16 people remain hospitalized. The FBI is leading the investigation and has classified the incident as an act of terrorism because they say that an ISIS flag was recovered from Jabbar's truck. Jabbar posted videos online prior to the attack expressing support for ISIS and his intention to carry out the attack. Also, 2 functional improvised explosive devices were found in coolers on Bourbon Street and rendered safe by authorities. Also, additional explosive devices were discovered in the French Quarter. Now, there have been some mixed reports on whether or not multiple individuals have been involved or are involved in this attack. At first, they said, yes, there was some surveillance footage that showed 2 men and a woman planting explosive devices. But then they did more investigation and they came out and said, no, actually, he acted alone. But now they're actually saying, actually, there might be some other people involved. I think we actually have the video clip of them saying there might be other people involved. Let's watch that.
Source within the New Orleans.
Hold on. I don't know why I did that. I had to turn it off.
Good morning. I am FBI Deputy Assistant Director Christopher Rea. I'm from our Counterterrorism Division at headquarters. I'm also joined by Assistant Special Agent in Charge Alethea Duncan from our New Orleans office, who you heard from yesterday. I'm here to discuss not only the latest investigative information we have here in New Orleans, but I'll also let you know about other investigative activities outside of the state. I first, and most importantly, want to send our deepest condolences to the victims of this horrific attack and their loved ones. 14 innocent victims were killed in this senseless attack, and at least 35 are injured. We cannot ease the grief people in this community and across the nation are feeling at this time, but rest assured, we stand with you and in support of you. All the resources, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later, all the resources of the FBI are being focused on tracking down every piece of evidence, every lead, every interview, every potential lead we've got. While I won't be able to answer all your questions today, my goal is to be as forthcoming as possible with you on what we've uncovered so far. First and foremost, let me be very clear about this point. This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act. This was obviously a critical incident, and with that, lots of information and tips come pouring in from law enforcement, first responders, and the public. We have been aggressively running down these tips and information. As you all know, that takes time, and we will continue to do so until every lead has been followed through on. This investigation is only a little more than 24 hours old. So I ask you to keep in mind that as I go through some of the specifics later. But at this point, currently, and this is another fact I want to be clear on, we do not assess at this point that anyone else involved in this attack except for Shamsa Din Jabbar, the subject you've already been briefed on. A little bit about what the FBI is doing. So we are surging people and assets to the area from across the region and across the nation. Special agents in multiple field offices across the country have been deployed and are assisting with potential aspects of this investigation and following up on every lead. Additional teams of special agents, professional staff, and victim specialists continue to arrive to provide more investigative power and assistance to the victims and their families. We've also forward deployed a number of our critical incident response group assets, including members of our hostage rescue team, special agent bomb technicians, and crisis management coordinators. In addition, we have deployed more evidence response technicians to continue to process the various scenes that we have. So far, we have received just over 400 tips from the public, and that information is being followed up on both here in New Orleans and across the country. Some of the tips are here in New Orleans, and there are other tips in other states across the country that we are following up on. The FBI team and our law enforcement partners here are also reviewing hundreds of hours of surveillance and other video from both the French Quarter and other locations. As for a timeline, at this point, investigators believe Jabbar picked up the rented F-150 in Houston, Texas on December 30th. He then drove from Houston to New Orleans on the evening of the 31st, and he posted several videos to an online platform proclaiming his support for ISIS. There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer. He also provided a will and testament.
You join no damn ISIS.
FBI and ATF.
Yeah, I already work for ISIS, U.S government.
FBI, we have a couple different scenes at the location. We have released the scene at Bourbon Street. That scene has been released. We also have a scene off of Mandeville address where we're currently searching that scene right now. FBI and ATF agents have secured that house, and that location is being searched for potential evidence. On New Year's morning, Jabbar opened fire after ramming through a blocked off area of Bourbon Street, used his truck as a weapon to run over the victims. Teams of specially trained victim specialists, again, as I said, are on the ground here in New Orleans, assisting survivors of the attack and loved ones of the deceased. We do not believe the public is in any danger around any of these locations. 3 phones linked to Jabbar have been recovered, and digital media exploitation is a priority to see what is on the devices and determine if there are any other potential leads. Additionally, we have recovered 2 laptops and are currently reviewing them for any potential leads. Those laptops were recovered at the Mandeville address. Evidence technicians will also be going over the F-150 truck Jabbar was driving. As you know, we recovered an ISIS flag from the back of the vehicle. Jabbar declared his support for the terrorist group on social media, as I stated before, as he made his way to New Orleans. FBI bomb technicians also recovered 2 IEDs in coolers, one from the cross-section of Bourbon and Orleans Street, and the second at an intersection approximately 2 blocks away. There were multiple reports of other devices. Those reports turned out to be misinformation or not actual functioning devices. Those are the only 2 devices that we've been able to recover.
They were devices, but they weren't functioning devices. See, these people lost so much.
Were functional. Both devices were rendered safe on scene. We did obtain surveillance footage showing Jabbar placing the devices where they were found. 2 other, as I said before, 2 other items of interest were determined not to be IEDs. A little bit about Jabbar. Jabbar himself was born in the United States and is a U.S. military veteran. We are looking in everything in his life. While we have interviewed many people who know Jabbar, we still need to talk to others. Whether you know Jabbar personally, worked with him, served in the military, or saw him in New Orleans or Texas, we need to talk to you. You may not think you have relevant information, but what you know could tie in to one of our investigative leads. Specifically, we want to talk to anyone who was in the French Quarter on New Year's Eve or early on New Year's Day. That includes people spotted near one of the 2 IEDs on Bourbon Street. The IED was inside a cooler, and many people stopped and looked at the cooler and then continued on their way. Let's be clear, again, we do not believe at this point these people are involved in this incident in any way. We want to speak to them as witnesses and want to know what they saw and when.
Bullshit. You don't want them to run.
I went down to the crime scene last night. It is very hard to put into words what it looked like and how difficult it was to see. Anyone with information can call us at 1-800-CALL-FBI or send digital tips to fbi.gov/Bourbon Street attack. Early this morning, evidence response teams finished their work at the crime scene. Bourbon Street has been turned over to the city of New Orleans. As you know, there's also an FBI investigation in Las Vegas. We are following up on all potential leads and not ruling everything out. However, at this point, there is no definitive link between the attack here in New Orleans and the one in Las Vegas. And again, I'll preface everything with what I started with in the beginning, which was this is very early in an investigation like this. Again, our thoughts and prayers are with the victims of this tragedy and everyone impacted across the country. They remain at the heart of our investigation. I also, although I've only been on the ground here a short time, I also want to express a sincere appreciation for our partners here, which include the U.S. Attorney's Office, HSI, ATF, the New Orleans PD, the Louisiana State Police, the Governor's Office, and countless others.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-host Harris Faulkner and
Two major incidents rocked the United States as we rang in the new year: a deadly truck attack in New Orleans and a shocking Cybertruck explosion outside of Trump's Las Vegas hotel. Both incidents had the nation on edge, sparking questions about political motives and systemic vulnerabilities, especially at the moment where we have a lot of anti-American people running around the country, from illegal aliens and gangs to radicalized domestic terrorists.
We are, of course, following that breaking news out of New Orleans. At least 15 people are dead, more than 30 injured after an Army veteran slams a rental truck into New Year's Eve revelers in what the FBI is calling a terrorist attack, and they do not think he acted alone.
We have new video just in of a Tesla Cybertruck that police say was intentionally detonated outside of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. This is, as of this morning, being investigated as a possible act of terrorism.
On New Year's Day, 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a resident of Texas, drove a rented Ford pickup truck, F-150, into a crowd celebrating on Bourbon Street, a high-traffic tourist area where you had a bunch of people on New Year's Eve and thousands of football fans in town for the Sugar Bowl. That's an annual college football bowl game held on New Year's Day in New Orleans. The idea originated in 1927, but wasn't officially kicked off until 1935, when the first Sugar Bowl game was played on the campus of Tulane University at Tulane Stadium. Tulane was the home of the Sugar Bowl for 40 years before it was moved to the New Orleans Superdome in 1975. That's where they've played the game ever since, except for 2006, when New Orleans was still recovering from Katrina. That one year, the bowl was moved to the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. This most recent bowl game, scheduled for January 1st, 2025, marked 90 years of the Sugar Bowl and 50 years since they hosted the game at the Superdome. So yeah, you had a lot of people in town for this game to see Notre Dame and the Georgia Bulldogs go at it. But all that would change when just hours before the team would wake up and prepare for the game, a man intentionally driving a truck through a crowd at Bourbon Street and Canal will put the anticipated game on hold, along with the whole city, as agencies came together from the local level, state, and federal to investigate this horrible attack. 15 people lost their lives and dozens were injured, with 2 explosive devices found nearby. As for the main suspect, Shamsuddin, there was also a video showing him driving, telling his family that he pledged his allegiance to ISIS.
They didn't go into the subject's history, Shamsuddin Jabbar, but the representative with the FBI says that he is an Army veteran and believed to have been honorably discharged. Just some information there, but they are asking for the public's help at this point. They do not believe that he acted alone. They're asking people who might have been in the French Quarter on Bourbon Street or near Bourbon Street last night, if they saw anything suspicious, to definitely report it to local law enforcement. They do have a digital tip line available for folks who submit that information. That's 1-800-CALL-FBI. But again, the priority for the local law enforcement officers who were speaking say that they are wanting to bring, they want justice to be served, and they want to make sure that folks here in the city of New Orleans, in town for the holiday and for the game, to feel like they are safe. But as of right now, the FBI is in charge of this investigation that is still active and ongoing. In the French Quarter, streets are blocked off. It is still an active crime scene down there.
And 15 people are confirmed dead and dozens of others injured after a driver plowed
crowd into a busy New Orleans street.
We're also learning more about the suspect's ties to Georgia. The FBI is investigating the crash as a terror attack after learning the suspect had an ISIS flag on that vehicle. Authorities also say he may not have acted alone.
We have team coverage for you tonight. Fox 5's Joy Dukes joins us live from Georgia State, where we've learned the suspect attended school.
But we start tonight with Fox's Rebecca Castor, who joins us live from New Orleans. Rebecca, a massive crime scene there and a very complicated investigation.
Yes, Russ, it's just getting started down here in New Orleans. It's still a very active scene here in the French Quarter. The crime scene tape still up behind me, a large police presence with multiple agencies just starting this investigation. The FBI says it does not believe the driver acted alone, and they're focused on a range of suspects.
We are committed, no doubt, to uncovering all details surrounding this tragedy.
New Orleans officials pledging justice for the victims of Wednesday's fatal truck ramming on Bourbon Street. A U.S. Army veteran with an ISIS flag on his vehicle swerved around makeshift barriers just hours into the new year.
A truck hits the corner and comes barreling through people, throwing people like a movie scene, like real life, throwing people into the air.
Police say the driver shot and killed in a gunfight with police was 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. citizen. Investigators finding weapons and potential IEDs inside the suspect's vehicle, with other potential IEDs located in the French Quarter.
We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal.
In Houston, a SWAT team searched the suspect's home. The FBI saying the incident is being investigated as an act of terrorism.
And as we know, this is not just an act of terrorism. This is evil.
Authorities are still investigating whether the suspect was a member of ISIS and are searching for others who may have been involved.
This is a very fluid process. And remember something, too. We're doing two things. We're hunting some bad people down, and we're securing the city, too. We're getting ready for a Sugar Bowl tomorrow.
A Sugar Bowl.
And that Sugar Bowl, of course, postponed until tomorrow to allow more time for added security.
Houston authorities and federal agents have been investigating an area on the city's north side in connection with the deadly attack in New Orleans.
FBI Houston and the Harris County Sheriff's Office say that the agencies were conducting a court-authorized search near the intersection of Hugh Road and Crescent Peak Drive. This morning, we have team coverage. We'll check in with our Gage Goulding again at 6:30 in New Orleans. But first, let's go to Brittany Jeffers, who's live where that suspect lived here in Houston. Brittany, good morning. What can you tell us?
Good morning to you, ladies. And you referenced that intersection at Crescent Peak Road and Hugh Road, and that is where we are right now. You look behind me and you can see there are two vehicles. This is with the Harris County Sheriff's Office blocking the road. And if you look down the street, we can see several different vehicles, law enforcement lights shining in the street out there. Now, as we know, our crews have been here since yesterday watching as this investigation is taking place. People who live in this neighborhood, however, say that this tragedy in New Orleans hitting very close to home.
I was just, hanging at home with my daughters and then kind of heard helicopters. Really just caught us by surprise, to be honest, because I saw it pop up on my Instagram feed where there's an accident that happened in New Orleans. I think that just goes to show that there's anything that can happen in the world.
So I want to show you this video. This is from the investigation scene overnight, where you can see several different agencies and barricades set up around the neighborhood. The FBI assisted by Harris County SWAT, HPD, and DHS. Again, all near this residence that investigators say the suspect at one point called home. Now, yesterday, I referenced our crews watched. This was during our 5 and 6 o'clock newscast as law enforcement evacuated children from an area near that house on Crescent Peak Drive. Not long after that, our drone captured exclusive video of a man exiting that address with his hands up, and SWAT officers had their guns drawn. We don't yet know if the children or this man have any connection to the suspect, however. Now, the FBI put out a statement several hours ago on social media referencing this investigation and stating that at this point, no arrests have been made. They also referenced the fact that they would be out here for several hours, but as As far as a specific timeline, we don't know how long this could take. But of course, because the FBI is involved, this could potentially be quite a long time. As far as the scene is concerned, again, this morning, if you are driving in the area, this intersection here near Hugh Road and Crescent Peak Drive, again, is blocked off this morning as this investigation continues to evolve.
These people are sick. They actually want us to believe they investigated something. Investigate yourself. Y'all did these terrorist attacks. This is disgusting. Oh, they on the job. Well, why the hell you didn't stop the people? Huh? Why you know these terrorist attacks were on the way? This is disgusting. They on the job. You know, all these, you know what really pissed me off? All these people getting overtime. The scam is on us. The scam is on everybody who got to pay the overtime for these officers who ain't solving shit. Social media did way more work than these people could ever think about doing on this damn case.
For now, reporting live, I'm Brittany Jeffers, KPRC 2 News.
Investigators are looking at both terrorist attacks in New Orleans, along with the other attack in Las Vegas, checking to see if they're linked in any way. Both incidents happened hours from each other, and the suspects used the same app to rent the trucks. In this case, the suspect rented a pickup truck from the Turo app, picked up the truck in Houston, and drove it to New Orleans. And in the other case, the suspect also went to Turo to rent a cyber truck. He picked up that truck in Colorado and drove it to Vegas, where he carried out his attack in front of the Trump Hotel. This is just really sad. Sending prayers to everyone in New Orleans, every local and every tourist impacted by this, as well as Las Vegas. Special thank you to everyone supporting the channel. Much love to Adrian, Creed,
People in Houston and in Beaumont, where the Bourbon Street attack suspect also once lived, are floored by his involvement.
Yeah, one family friend says he's also angry at whoever may have influenced Shamsuddin Jabbar.
Jason Miles joins us now live. Jason, what else did these individuals who knew the suspect share with you?
Hey there, guys. Well, an old Army buddy here in the Houston area says news of the attack left him speechless, while that family friend over in Beaumont says it definitely doesn't match up with the guy he thought he knew.
A shelf inside his Cypress area home holds many of Trevor Neal's military mementos, including from a stint at the former Fort Gordon in Georgia, where he first met Shamsuddin Jabbar, who everyone knew as Sham.
You know, he's a normal individual, no red flags. Great soldier, phenomenal friend.
Like Sham, Neal settled in the Houston area after the Army.
Born and raised in Beaumont, Texas.
And thought his old friend was doing well until this week's shocking news.
I was absolutely floored. I buckled up and I couldn't talk for 20, 30 seconds. I was just, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
He can't imagine what may have led Jabbar to want to hurt so many innocent civilians after honorably serving his country.
And it's very unfortunate that he took that path.
It's a path family friends in Beaumont, where Jabbar graduated from high school in 2001, cannot comprehend either.
Now they're trying to humanize this psychopathic killer, this terrorist. Come on, man. They didn't even give Michael Brown this type of, make Mike Brown look this good. When the police kill people in the damn street, they'll never humanize you. So all the worst photos of you. This is crazy.
Surprised because this is not how we knew Shamsuddin.
This man, who did not want to be shown on camera, spoke with our sister station after meeting with Jabbar's family.
And I just arrived here to mention my condolences, my sadness, my shock and anger a little bit.
Including at whomever he says may have influenced his friend.
To think that such an acts that he did were okay. It's not okay.
And Mr. Neal, the old Army friend, says he lost contact with Jabbar in recent years, but the last time they texted was about grabbing lunch or dinner here in downtown Houston, a meeting that never happened. Reporting live, Jason Miles, KHOU 11 News.
All these lies. Who is that? That's probably his ISIS buddy right there. What the hell y'all didn't call the cops? Y'all just met up with his OG. She's talking about he mad at whoever influenced him. You influenced him, OG. You don't want to show your face. Yeah, your ass left some pipe bombs downtown to New Orleans too, old man. You mad? We mad too. Nigga, your partner was ISIS. Nigga, we was mad.
Latest on the attack. The FBI now says the suspect acted alone.
A lot of new information has come out. WGNO's Jordan Lipcott is at Bourbon Street and Canal, where the attack began, with the latest from law enforcement. Jordan.
Kurt, Susie, the FBI is releasing new photos tonight of Saddam Sudin Jabbar moments before he killed 14 and injured dozens.
There's been hundreds and hundreds of leads done just in 24 hours. We're confident at this point that there is no accomplice.
During a Thursday morning briefing, the FBI reports surveillance video shows Shamsuddin Jabbar, the man responsible for carrying out the New Orleans terrorist.
How we know the government, he worked for the U.S. military. Okay, if he's ISIS, right? Let's just play along with him here. Let's humor him. He's ISIS. ISIS radicalized him. Now he wants jihad on behalf of ISIS, and he's going to get jihad on the great Satan. Why he didn't attack the military? I mean, he is ISIS, right? He went hit soft targets, man. This is the U.S. government with that bullshit. Why he didn't attack the military? He ISIS.
Attack, planting 2 IEDs along Bourbon Street between midnight and 3 a.m. An IED located inside a cooler caught the attention of some bystanders, which is why previous reports suggested they were accomplices of Jabbar.
It turns out those were just patrons on the street that were looking inside the coolers, right? Well, we didn't know that at first, so we had to kind of track all that down and put that to rest. So that's just an example, one of the pieces of information, but there were other pieces of information.
Okay, all right, so follow it. 3 people, they said it was his accomplices yesterday. They said that. We didn't say that. They said they was also ISIS. And we looking for them. We said, show us the video. Now they're saying, oh, there's nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. Those people, they just looked into the cooler, seen the pipe bomb, seen the bombs, the IED, the explosives, shut the cooler and went on about their business. Where are those people who willing to say that on camera? Where they at? Where in the social media days, they can start a YouTube channel. They seen the pipe bomb. I'm waiting to see those 3 people who say, yeah, we seen those pipe bombs. These people are disgusting.
Information that after we got our feet under us a little bit and on the ground here, we were able to put together a much more accurate picture.
Meanwhile, FBI and ATF agents were back at the Mandeville Street house that Jabbar had rented, searching for additional evidence. They recovered 2 of his laptops and confirmed the house fire started after Jabbar was killed by authorities.
There's a lot of different ways that could happen. You could have different time devices. You could have a long cord that extended that time. You could also have pressure cookers that were put on top of the stove filled with gasoline, and then it went off. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but that is why our ATF National Response Team is here to answer those questions and get that investigative lead back to our team.
Although investigators have carved out some of the case, questions remain, like why Jabbar chose Bourbon Street.
We know that he specifically picked out Bourbon Street. Not quite sure why. I mean, I think one can assume that it was lots of people New Year's Eve, with a target for an attack. That's the stuff in the coming days as far as that path to radicalization that we're really going to be digging into.
The FBI also says 2 other items of interest that were recovered were determined not to be IEDs. Susie, Kurt?
Just incredible how this story is going in directions we might not have thought of at first. Thanks, Jordan.
The facts as we know them in Las Vegas make absolutely no sense. Former FBI Special Agent Michael Harrigan, former FBI Assistant Director for New York, Louis Scholero is with us. Gentlemen, appreciate it. Michael, start with you. This one seems just bizarre on its face because nothing adds up. Is there a way to make this fact pattern that we've been told fit something that's real?
Well, when you look at this, there's a lot of symbolism here. You have the Trump Hotel. It could or could not be. It may not be an issue at all here. Maybe in his mind it had something to do with some statement he was trying to make. But, you know, it looks to me, from what I can see from the news reports, that this is a suicide. This is a combat veteran who was highly decorated. He had 2 Valor Awards for action in combat, in addition to several other Bronze Stars for service. So he was in combat. He had combat experience, and it's unknown what trauma he suffered. But, you know, more important here is, why did he pick the Trump Hotel for a suicide such as this, if it was as it appears to be?
Suicide. This man's an active duty U.S. military, not somebody who was retired. Man just came back from NATO facilities.
And why the explosives if he shot himself in the head already and was already deceased, supposedly, at the time the explosives detonated? So, you know, there's a lot of unanswered questions that hopefully will come out in the next few days here.
Yeah, so much of things coming out, right, is trusting where it's coming from. And the FBI has a long history of being certain before they speak. That seems to have changed. Maybe it's for ideological reasons. Maybe it's just incompetency issues. It's unclear. But yesterday morning, about 7 o'clock in the morning, people who were up that early after New Year's woke up to news of a car driving through the French Quarter and killing, at the time, 10 people. Later became 15 people. And the special agent or assistant special agent in charge in New Orleans got in front of television cameras at that time and said this.
This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found. And we are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. As Chief Kirkpatrick said, we're asking everyone to stay away from Bourbon Street, specifically from Canal Street to St. Anne. That is my ask. Once again, stay away from Bourbon Street, Canal Street, all the way to St. Anne until we can figure out what is going on.
Louis, can you blame people who, after hearing that, say, and I'll say this with great reverence for the FBI, that the Bureau is broken?
You know, Leila, I couldn't agree more, just in terms of, obviously we recognize the public's need for information, but there's a huge danger in speaking before you have your facts together. And I think yesterday morning that was evident. The statement should have read, it's under investigation right now. We're pursuing our leads, and we'll make a more definitive statement once we have that in mind. But to come out that early and to advise that it perhaps was not an act of terrorism, I can't defend that. You know, all these cases, as you know, depend on really very detailed and meticulous investigation, and that needs to unfold. But to be able to make a statement like that really could undermine any potential prosecution if, in fact, other perpetrators are found. So I think that was a huge mistake.
Look, I always believe in incompetence over conspiracy because people just aren't that good enough to be conspirators normally, or aren't that smart enough. But when you see over 4 years the focus of the FBI switch in so many ways to go into school board meetings rather than focusing on terrorism, to becoming so focused on social justice versus law enforcement. I'm wondering, Louis, can you help but see people, you know, you said you couldn't agree more when I said the Bureau's broken. What's broken?
Well, I think as President-elect Trump, is stating that there is a need for change. I don't think there's any question about that. The Bureau does need to focus on really where the priorities lie. Today's events or yesterday's events clearly demonstrate that. So I do think that somebody coming in that understands the process, there's no greater public responsibility than to protect the public. And that's where the focus needs to be.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation. Joining us now is Chris Poisson. He went to school with the suspect from the New Orleans attack. Chris, thank you for being with us. Just tell us a little bit about your experience with Shamsuddin. You called him Sham in middle school and high school. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. Shamsuddin, his friends called him Sham.
Okay, so you went to middle school and high school with him. When he went off to the Army, you went off to the Air Force, and I know you kind of lost touch, but then you'd gotten back in touch a few years ago on social media. Tell us first what he was like in middle school and high school.
Back then, he was really reserved. He kept to himself. He didn't say too much. He was very smart, very good in school. He wasn't like a troublemaker or anything like that. He was just he was a model student, really. We met in 8th grade, and then we just happened to move to the same town in 9th grade, went to the same high school. So our friendship just continued on until high school, until he joined the Army. And like you said, I joined the Air Force.
So when you touched base with him a few years back on social media, I think it was 5 or so years ago, and got back in touch with him, what were those exchanges like, and had he changed?
Well, yeah, we had lost touch because whenever we graduated, social media wasn't a thing yet. So whenever Facebook came along, we reconnected. And then we kept in touch for several years, actually, through Facebook, just messaging back and forth, just checking on one another. And then up until the last, few times I had spoke with him, he had become really, enthralled in his faith. And pretty much every conversation we had or post that he was making at that time, in some way, shape, or form, it all, resorted back to his Muslim faith.
Okay, so he talked a lot about Islam. Did you get the sense he was radicalized? Or I understand you are a Christian and you were talking with him about religion. Were you having, respectful exchanges?
It was very respectful, and it wasn't anything like he was upset or mad at anybody. Every post and every conversation I ever had with him, he was never mad at anything. He never talked about overthrowing the government or being mad at a particular race or religion or anything like that. He was always very respectful and very positive. His message that I got from him after every conversation was that he was very positive. And it's just that what happened yesterday just came by complete surprise. I never would have seen this coming.
Yeah, you were shocked. And we've learned from our reporting that I think since about that time you would have re-engaged with him on social media. He has been suffering financial problems. He has obviously his family, his place in his family has certainly fallen apart. Did you talk to him about any of that?
No, we didn't get that deep into it. Whenever we had messaged each other back and forth, it was just more so checking on one another. Because like I said, we met in middle school back in 1996.
Yeah.
And so whenever we did talk, it was just, how are you doing? How are things, on your neck in your neck of the woods, and just, keeping it pretty superficial. We never got into anything really deep, with family issues or anything like that. So I didn't know he had any of that stuff going on, until the news report started coming out after the fact, since yesterday.
So, you were shocked by this, and you also have an interesting perspective because you have a military background. You served in an anti-terrorism unit. He served during this period of time where obviously we see the threats that the U.S. was confronting after 9/11, and then seeing him then say that he is swearing allegiance to ISIS. What do you think of that?
Complete disbelief, utter shock. One of our classmates actually messaged me yesterday morning and asked me if I had seen the news, because that's when they had identified Sham in the attacks. And I told him, I don't believe that. That's probably just false reporting, a mistaken identity. And the more I looked into it, more credible reports started coming in, and it was him. And he never gave any tips or clues to me personally whenever I was speaking with him that he was on the verge of doing something like this. It's just tragic, and I never saw this coming.
What questions do you have about how he made this change and went from the person that you knew to the person who committed this horrible act?
Well, the questions that I have really is just more so from the reports that, you guys have been putting out there since the attacks. I've learned, which while I was on hold, that he's acted alone. I didn't know that was a thing until just recently. And I learned that he had bomb making materials or bombs inside of his vehicle. And the thing that I don't understand is if he went through if he went through all the trouble to have the bombs made, put them in his vehicle, load them up, and drive to New Orleans, why would he use his vehicle as a weapon and not even attempt to place the bombs or set them off or whatever? It's almost as if he didn't want to use them. I don't know. I'm not in his head, so I can't speak for him. A lot of it just doesn't make sense to me. It's hard to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, as we understand it at this point, it may have been that police confronted him before he carried out the totality of the attack that he had planned. But again, Chris, there's so much we don't know. You have questions, we have questions. The police are tracking those down. FBI is tracking those down. Chris, thanks for being with us. I can't imagine what it's like to be in your position, but we appreciate you speaking with us.
The deadly truck ramming attack in New Orleans. New information is now emerging about the driver, as authorities now believe he acted alone. CNN's Omar Jimenez is joining us live from New Orleans right now, where Bourbon Street just reopened. Omar, what are you seeing there, and what are you hearing from investigators?
Yeah, Wolf. Well, for starters, yes, Bourbon Street is now reopened for the first time since this deadly attack took place. You can sort of see the scene. It's less crowded than maybe it typically would be. Over there in Canal Street, down behind us, you see there are actually major barriers blocking the entrance. It's open to pedestrians, but it is still closed to vehicles. That said, there is still a major security presence here, as you see some of these police vehicles being let in. You also might notice some of those yellow barriers on the sidewalks as well. That is new. We saw those being installed over the course of today. And for those that have seen the surveillance video of this truck coming through, it did initially go over part of the sidewalk. And then, of course, it would have come down this direction onto the street over toward this area as well. Again, all of it now reopened to pedestrians for the first time. And on the investigatory side, you were talking about some of it before you were coming to me. The FBI today saying, as opposed to yesterday, that they believe this driver acted alone. Remember, yesterday they believed he wasn't solely responsible for this. They said this new conclusion comes as a result of actually going through interviews, going through phone and laptop records, where they also uncovered that they believe this is 100% ISIS motivated. Another big aspect of this too, there was a major football game going on. It was delayed to today. That is also underway. We were over there earlier talking to some fans, and they were nervous. Some of them were out that very night when this happened in the early morning hours, but they are all at the game with also an increased security presence as well. There was music coming through earlier, and a little bit closer to the entrance of this, there are flowers laid out, 14 of them for the 14 killed in this attack, Wolf. But as you can see, Bourbon Street is now back reopened. And although it may not be as crowded as it might typically be at this time of night, it'll be curious to see if that changes as the night goes on, Wolf.
All right, we shall see. Omar Jimenez on the ground for us in New Orleans. Thank you very much. There are also some new questions tonight if potential warning signs were missed after CNN reviewed internal government documents warning law enforcement just last month of potential violence from lone offenders around the holidays. and the potential use of vehicles as deadly weapons. Here now is CNN's Brian Todd. Brian, what can you tell us about these warnings?
Wolf, at the moment, these warnings seem to have been very far-sighted and on the mark, but national security experts tell us the reality is that some of these attacks are extremely hard to prevent. As law enforcement officials scramble to determine the motive of the New Orleans suspect, new information tonight on recent warnings that these very same types of attacks could occur. According to two internal memos obtained by CNN, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI issued a joint bulletin to law enforcement agencies on December 6th, warning about threats from lone wolf offenders and the possibility of vehicle rammings. The bulletin warns that lone wolves could hit, quote, soft targets in the homeland during winter holidays, and that those offenders have historically used simple tactics such as edged weapons, firearms, or vehicle ramming.
The big picture on this attack is that this has actually been a long time coming. And now we're at a point where the American public are waking up.
Indeed, back in 2010, Al-Qaeda's branch in Yemen published an article calling vehicles the ultimate mowing machine, promoting the use of four-wheel drive pickup trucks because, quote, the stronger the better, and encouraging attackers to pick up as much speed as possible while maintaining control, and, quote, be able to strike as many people as possible in your first run. Analysts say it's their simplicity and subtlety that have made vehicles attractive weapons for terrorists.
You don't need any special preparation. Buying a gun might attract attention. Certainly making bombs is something that might attract attention, might also suggest some degree of training. Who knows?
Following that December 6th bulletin, and after the December 20th vehicle attack on a Christmas market in Germany that killed at least 5 people and injured more than 200, the Department of Homeland Security sent another warning to law enforcement, reiterating that mass gatherings were potential targets and that vehicle ramming had been used in the U.S. as a tactic before. One of those bulletins referred to the attack on a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin in November 2021, when a suspect driving an SUV killed 6 people and injured more than 60. Still, analyst Beth Sanner says there's only so much law enforcement can do to prevent vehicle attacks.
You can do things around big events like blocking off entrances to the venues using, dump trucks, other large vehicles, but you can't close off everything. And it is incredibly expensive to really shut down events. And you have things like parades where people are moving down streets.
Beth Sanner says none of this should discourage anyone from going to large outdoor gatherings, but she says there are some things that citizens can do to protect themselves at these events. Pay attention to where the barriers are and where there could be spaces that vehicles could get through those barriers. Don't stand near the edges of entryways, and don't constantly look at your phone. Wolf.
Good advice indeed. All right, Brian Todd reporting for us. Brian, thank you very, very much. Brian is always there for us on the scene. Coming up in our next hour, by the way, I'll speak with the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. He's going to be standing by live. For more insight into the investigation, we're joined now by the Louisiana Attorney General, Liz Murrill. Attorney General, thank you so much for joining us on this very, very busy day for you. It's been roughly, as you know, about 36 hours since the attack. Bourbon Street is reopened. The Sugar Bowl is underway. Are you confident New Orleans is now secure and safe?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just returned from New Orleans, and there is an enormous police presence in New Orleans. I feel very confident that the city is incredibly secure, and it's just been a tough 36 hours.
Very tough indeed. No way to start a new year. CNN Attorney General has obtained some exclusive video from a doorbell camera showing the suspect outside of his rental home just a few hours before the attack. How important will bystander video and photos, for that matter, be for this overall investigation?
It's been very important, and I know that the FBI is still asking for all kinds of tips and footage and any information on any interaction that anybody had with this individual so that it can help them create a more complete picture of all of his movements. And even before that, long before that, they want to put a better picture together of who this person was and how he came to be so radicalized and so hate-filled that he mowed down 40 people on Bourbon Street yesterday morning.
Horrible situation. CNN Attorney General has obtained memos from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI warning law enforcement just last month about potential lone actors using vehicles as weapons. What more do you think could have been done to prevent an attack like this one?
Well, you know, this is a known risk. I mean, I think that everybody has been preparing this. We knew, I think all law enforcement has known that lone actors, lone kind of wolf actors could be a threat, but long before a month ago. So that's not breaking news, I think, to law enforcement. Certainly, we've expected potential for things like that to happen in New Orleans because there are parades all of the time during Mardi Gras. And, you know, so you're all constantly dealing with traffic, not necessarily people who are angry and want to kill other people, but you always have the risk of drunk drivers and things like that. So I think there's just always been some effort to protect against that in New Orleans. And there was a vehicle placed at the front of Bourbon Street. It did not cover the entirety of the area, so the sidewalk was still open.
And that was so horrible indeed. Did you or anyone in your office receive any sort of credible threat information about some kind of attack around the New Year's holiday?
No, no one has reported receiving any kind of threat that would have led anybody to believe that there was anything other than the kind of trying to prepare and avoid the possibility of some kind of act, but nobody had any information of any kind of threat.
We know dozens were injured in this brutal attack. And you said yesterday, Attorney General, that some were now still fighting for their lives. What can you tell us about how they are doing right now?
Well, I know that there are over 20 people still in the hospital. I think 23 is the count that I saw last. 10 of those people are still in critical condition. And we've lost a significant number of lives. I think this morning they confirmed 14, 15 counting the truck driver, but 14 people because of his actions. And we've got 10 people still in critical condition. So, I mean, it was a terrible, terrible loss.
Terrible. One final question, Attorney General, before I let you go. The Super Bowl is scheduled to be in New Orleans early next month. Are you guys ready for it? Are the fans, the 80,000 or whatever number of fans who are planning on attending, are they going to be safe?
They are going to be safe. I'm confident that they're going to be safe and that we're going to have a great game and a great time in the city of New Orleans for the Super Bowl. You know, I know that everyone, including me, are doubling down our efforts to reevaluate every possible weak point in our city. The Super Bowl committee will be part of that. The federal government will be part of that, and state and local officials will be part of that. So I'm confident that we are going to look at this again with fresh eyes after this incident, and we will have a safe Super Bowl.
Breaking news, the family of Shamsuddin Jabbar speaking out for the first time, telling CNN that the man that they knew is completely different from the man who drove a pickup truck into a crowd, purposely killing 14, trying to kill countless more. His brother, just moments ago, telling CNN, quote, he was very well-tempered, slow to anger, kind, soft-spoken. That's why it was so unbelievable that he would be capable of something like this. Something screwed him up. He's not this type of person. Someone or something fogged his mind. His brother says that he never had any conversation with him about ISIS. Ed Lavandera is out front tonight in Houston, and that is where Jabbar lived.
Investigators continue trying to unravel the mystery of how 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar became a radicalized ISIS sympathizer. The Texas-born U.S. Army veteran served in Afghanistan and lived in Houston. Before he was killed in a shootout with police, the FBI says Jabbar had proclaimed his support for ISIS in a series of videos posted online.
There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends.
A childhood friend who had kept in touch with Jabbar on Facebook said he was called Sham in high school and had since become very religious.
Pretty much every conversation we had or post that he was making at that time, in some way, shape, or form, it all, resorted back to his Muslim faith.
An Army spokesperson says Jabbar served in the Army and Army Reserve for more than a decade, part of that time as an information technology specialist. Sean Keenan was a student journalist in 2015 when Jabbar attended Georgia State University. He interviewed Jabbar about the struggles of returning to civilian life after the military.
I remember a very calm, collected guy. You know, certainly no red flags. He did come across as a leader and a helper. And exactly what went wrong after that remains mysterious to me.
This is the home in North Houston where Shamsuddin Jabbar lived. A neighbor tells us that he was here for just about a year and a half. The aftermath of how investigators knocked down the door and fence to access Jabbar's house was visible from the neighbor's yard. A neighbor tells us that he last saw Jabbar on New Year's Eve morning. He was out front loading up a white truck. Jabbar told him that he had found a new job in Louisiana and he was moving there.
The morning he was moving. I asked him if he need hands for moving, help him out as a neighbor. Do you need any help for moving things around? He said, I'm okay.
Mumtaz Bashir lived next door to Jabbar, and he said they only spoke briefly on Tuesday morning while Jabbar was loading what he described as light items into a white pickup truck. He asked Jabbar about his new job.
He said the same thing what he was doing related to the same thing. I think what he mentioned me was it was in IT.
Bashir says he only saw the truck there one night and was stunned to learn Jabbar drove a white truck in the terror attack on New Year's Day.
We still don't believe it that's the person. We just, no way.
And Aaron, the FBI has released several new pictures tonight of Jabbar, taken about an hour and 15 minutes before the attack there in the French Quarter. Jabbar is walking around. They're urging the public to look at those photos if they saw someone like him walking around the French Quarter to reach out to them. They also released a picture of a cooler that contained an IED device. Investigators want to hear from people who might have witnessed any of this. And really, you know, the staggering news tonight is the news from Jabbar's brother and father, who tell CNN that they never saw any indication that Jabbar had become radicalized in recent months or years, and that he had become an ISIS sympathizer. Aaron?
All right. Ed, thank you very much. And
I want to get some more on these breaking stories right now. Joining us, the U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining us. I know you have a lot going on. We really appreciate it. So this investigation and what happened in New Orleans is now what, in its second day. Where do things go from here? What do you still need to know?
Well, the FBI is leading the investigation, Wolf. As you know, of course, 14 innocent lives were lost in that tragic event, and our hearts break for the families and loved ones. And we pray for those who suffered injuries for their swift recovery. There's still a great deal of investigation underway. The FBI has, of course, captured videos, as the reporter indicated. We have located phones and laptops. Residences are being searched. There's a great deal of investigation still underway. The conclusion has been reached. This is an event that was inspired by a foreign terrorist ideology. This individual ascribed to the heinous beliefs of ISIS. With respect to the Las Vegas incident, no motive has yet to be determined. Both investigations are at an early stage.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. You know, it's very interesting. You're the Secretary of Homeland Security. CNN has obtained a joint bulletin from the Department of Homeland Security warning of lone offender attacks coming up, specifically mentioning the potential use of vehicle ramming. That bulletin came out and was sent around the country to cities and states, warning of this potential danger. Did New Orleans screw up, basically not pay attention to that warning?
I don't think that's fair to say, Wolf. That wouldn't be a fair conclusion to draw. That was not our first bulletin with respect to the threat of the lone offender. The perpetrator of the terrorist attack yesterday in New Orleans was an Army veteran, a U.S.-born citizen. We have spoken now for about 10 years about the phenomenon of an individual resident in the United States radicalized to violence by a foreign terrorist ideology or other ideologies. We're speaking of a veteran here. Local officials do the best they can in securing the well-being of their residents. We work very closely with our state and local partners.
The FBI says this New Orleans attacker was, quote, 100% inspired by ISIS. What can you say about how his connection to ISIS emerged?
Well, that is still a subject to investigation. That is one of the key elements of the investigation. The motive has been identified. Why precisely this individual radicalized an Army veteran, a United States citizen, why he radicalized to a foreign terrorist ideology is still the subject of review. Why there was encouragement by the FBI special agent to individuals who know Jabbar to communicate with the FBI whatever information they might have about that path to radicalization.
Very disturbing indeed. In Las Vegas, as you all know, Mr. Secretary, a decorated active duty Army Special Forces sergeant is believed to have caused that cyber truck to explode just in front of the Trump Hotel there. Are you confident this person acted alone? And what can you say about his motive?
Again, Wolf, we're at a preliminary stage of the investigation. A motive has not been identified. There is no evidence of any other individuals working in concert with the individual in the cyber truck, but we cannot rule that out. But there is no evidence of other conspirators.
As you know, there's you've suggested there's no evidence of linkage between Las Vegas and New Orleans, these two attacks. But there have been several very, very significant similarities that occurred during these two attacks, right?
Well, both individuals rented their respective vehicles from an app. Both individuals were U.S. citizens who have served in the military. But that doesn't necessarily draw a connection between the two events other than similarities of characteristics.
Are you 100% convinced that the individual in Las Vegas had no affiliation with a terrorist organization?
I don't think we know enough to draw any conclusion just yet. We're at a preliminary stage.
So all these similarities that you mentioned, and there are other similarities
There are others
as well, purely coincidental?
Wolf, we're going to refrain from drawing assessments and conclusions until we learn more evidence. We owe that. That's a responsibility of a careful and thorough investigation. And quite frankly, a responsibility we owe the public not to be premature in our conclusions.
I don't know if you know this, but President-elect Trump is falsely linking the New Orleans attack to migrants following an erroneous Fox News report. How dangerous is the spread? Is it to spread this kind of disinformation around the country by the president-elect of the United States?
Wolf, it is not a time now to stoke fear. It is a time to calm fear. It is a time to draw conclusions based on evidence adduced in an investigation. This is not the time for politics. This is the time for national unity. This is not a time to inflame individuals. It is a time to grieve for lives lost, to pray for those who are suffering, and to come together as a country.
We're grateful to you for coming in and sharing some thoughts with us. Very important stories indeed. Appreciate it, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Wolf.
Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Tonight, blaming the southern border for the New Orleans attack, President-elect Trump posting a
Experts are warning ISIS still poses a very dangerous global threat. The attack in New Orleans, a grim reminder of the group's reach years after U.S. and coalition forces dismantled its caliphate in the Middle East. CNN's Nick Robertson has a closer look.
2024 saw ISIS attacks spike. This massive concert hall attack in Moscow, killing more than 100 people in March, their deadliest, claimed by their most active franchise, ISIS-K or ISKP in Afghanistan. A month later, this bloody attack inside a Russian jail, 4 guards killed. A stabbing attack followed in Germany. They attacked in Afghanistan and Iran. Another of their estimated 10 franchises or provinces fought Nigerian troops.
We've seen a huge increase in tempo over the last year or two. In 2024, there were like 14 or 15 arrests related to the Islamic State in the U.S.
Well, like I say, shit is so funny. These people got the audacity. They just put ISIS #2 in power in Syria, and they acting like ISIS is on the rise. Yeah, you made sure they was on the rise, goddamn.
It's a far cry from 5 years ago when ISIS appeared to be on the back foot. Their short-lived Iraq and Syrian caliphate beaten by U.S. and coalition partners into a seeming surrender.
These people did not fight no ISIS. They helped ISIS. Russia, Syria, Iraq, Iran was defeating ISIS. Not fucking U.S., who was funding and backing ISIS.
But not anymore, according to MI5's intelligence chief.
After a few years of being pinned well back, they've resumed efforts to export terrorism. We and many European partners are detecting IS-connected activity in our homelands, which we're moving early to disrupt.
Taylor Swift and her Eras tour in Vienna, beneficiary of the heightened safeguarding. An ISIS-inspired plot forcing her to call off her show. What has changed, Zelin says, is that ISIS is centralizing, learning from its mistakes in Syria.
They integrated a lot of their provinces together under this general directorate of provinces. So there's a bit more coordination on the global level within its network.
In the Mideast, the ISIS brand is apparently still attracting supporters, like these three Omanis in one of many such ISIS propaganda videos the terror group posts. Their bloody bounce back began several years ago, gaining temporary global attention, killing 13 US troops as coalition forces pulled out of Afghanistan in 2021. But since then, most of ISIS's recovery has not sparked massive global attention. 2025 might be the year that changes.
If they can do something in the US, if they can do something in Europe, if they can do something in Russia, Turkey, Iran, Central Asia.
See, that's why you got to take a look at fake news just to see where they're going with this. You see what they're doing? Scaring the hell out of regular people who believe they BS. They're going to go to Syria and say they got to go defeat ISIS so they can steal all the rest of the riches, capture Damascus. But they're going to have to go fight ISIS. They can't let ISIS get away with attacking America now, can they?
Asia, if they can do it, they'll do it, because for them, it's a global war.
And a success for ISIS in this context could be as simple as an attacker like Shamsuddin Jabbar claiming, as he has done, to have acted in ISIS's name, even when he may not have had any physical support from them, Wolf.
Our thanks to CNN's Nick Robertson for that report. Nick, thank you very, very much. I want to bring in retired U.S. Army General Wesley Clark, the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. He's a CNN military analyst. General Clark, thanks so much for joining us. Jabbar, as you well know, and all of us know by now, was a U.S. citizen, a military veteran. How is ISIS ideology attractive to someone like him?
He's a man who got out of the military. He had a really troubled personal life. He was failing in his marriage. He tried businesses failed. I think he was looking for anything to hold on to. And so unlike a young person who would be looking for some way to latch onto something for his identity, this guy was sliding downhill quickly. He would take anything at this point, I suppose. And somehow he was on the ISIS websites. And Wolf, what it says to me is we've got to do a better job of policing the websites, knowing who's on them, knowing who's back and forth in the correspondence, and answering.
Hey, ISIS websites. These people are out of their mind. ISIS got websites. The CIA.
This is difficult to do. It takes a lot of manpower, and ISIS is learning and has learned how to elude U.S. surveillance and efforts, and so this is part of their resurgence. We're just going to have to do a better job on this.
It's absolutely true. We've seen several instances, General, as you well know, of ISIS-inspired incidents around the world in recent months. How is this terrorist organization still able to inspire these sorts of terror attacks?
I think there are always going to be people in a globalized economy who either don't feel significant and are looking for some way to put meaning in their lives. That would be a young person who was alienated in school and early job, or someone in midlife, like this terrorist in New Orleans who has failed and is looking for anything and any support. He can be manipulated online by some clever leadership by ISIS. And this is really the danger. Maybe he didn't go online with the intent of killing a bunch of people and committing suicide, but then he's groomed into it. And that's what we really have to be careful of. Really, it's a whole of society approach. It's people who are friends and relatives looking out for each other. That's where it starts. And then it's an effective government surveillance program of these websites. And then it's neighbors and police and state security organizations who are clued in to the people who are at risk in their areas.
It's the early hours of New Year's Day, and a white pickup truck is stuck in traffic. The streets are busy with revelers in the French Quarter, the most famous tourist destination in New Orleans. The truck passes a police car, and it suddenly turns right, plowing into people. In this security camera video, you can see how fast it's going and how escaping its path is just a matter of split-second timing or luck.
You just watched footage from a devastating terror attack that took place in New Orleans over New Year's Day. 14 people were killed and 35 more were injured in this horrific attack in New Orleans amid New Year's celebrations. Now, there is still a lot to be learned about this attack. Authorities, of course, are investigating various aspects of this, including whether or not this individual acted alone and what the real motive was behind the attack. But here is what we know so far. So the man who carried out the attack was identified as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar, who's a US-born citizen from Houston. Now, he was also a veteran, and we have some other interesting information about him. So take a look at his mugshot, or a photo of him, I should say. He served in the Army for more than a decade as a human resource specialist and information technology specialist. He was on active duty between March of 2007 and January of 2015 and deployed to Afghanistan once from February of 2009 to January of 2010. Now, after leaving active duty in January of 2015, Jabbar served as an Army Reserve or part of the Army Reserve until July of 2020. And at that point, he left the service as a staff sergeant. Now, law enforcement has described the incident as a terror attack, and Jabbar has been killed after he crashed his truck, which he had rented. He emerged from the vehicle and then started to shoot at law enforcement. And at that point, law enforcement shot and killed him. Now, while the FBI is still investigating whether others were involved in this attack, so far they believe that he acted alone. And we're also learning more about his possible motive. Now, I mentioned that he is a US-born citizen. Jabbar, though, drove from Houston to New Orleans on Tuesday evening and posted several videos online proclaiming his support for ISIS and mentioning he joined ISIS before this summer. And that's according to Christopher Raya of the FBI. Now, in fact, his truck had an ISIS flag, but authorities still do not know if he was merely inspired by ISIS or if he was taking direction from ISIS members, if he was working with ISIS members to carry out that attack. That is still being investigated, although so far from what authorities have learned, they do not believe he was acting, with anyone else involved. But we'll see if anything else develops from that. Now, Jabbar was hell-bent on killing as many people as possible, driving a pickup truck onto the sidewalk around a parked police car, serving as a barricade to plow into pedestrians, officials said. Jabbar then exited the damaged vehicle and began shooting at authorities with his assault rifle. Police say that he was also in possession of a handgun, and 2 officers in that shootout or in that incident were injured, one by gunfire and the other was actually pinned by the truck that Jabbar used to carry out the attack. Now, the suspect drove a rented truck through crowds on Bourbon Street and was also caught on surveillance prior to doing that attack, essentially placing or planting explosive devices in the area. Surveillance footage showed Jabbar placing 2 improvised explosive devices in coolers in the Bourbon Street area. Quote, those are the only 2 devices that we've been able to recover that were functional. Both devices were rendered safe on scene, according to the FBI Deputy Assistant Director, Christopher Raya. Now, the middle school and high school classmate of Jabbar's actually ended up speaking to CNN today about his religious influences, how he became a little more radicalized in his faith. And I think it's important to hear from him. So again, this was a former classmate of Jabbar's from both middle school and high school. Take a look.
Up until the last, few times I had spoke with him, he had become really, enthralled in his faith, and pretty much every conversation we had or post that he was making at that time, in some way, shape, or form, it all, resorted back to his Muslim faith.
Were you having, respectful exchanges?
It was very respectful, and it wasn't anything like he was upset or mad at anybody. Every post and every conversation I ever had with him, he was never mad at anything. He never talked about overthrowing the government or being mad at a particular race or religion or anything like that.
So while his classmate noticed that he'd become more religious, he didn't see any red flags or warning signs about it. But what I also think is really fascinating is we're learning about his past marriages, issues that he had with the law, and issues that he had with his own personal finances. And that could give us some signs in regard to what might have motivated his attack. So before we get to that, though, let's just talk a little more about what CNN is reporting about Jabbar's online videos. So he made reference in the videos to his divorce and how he had at first planned to gather his family for a celebration with the intention of killing them. But Jabbar said in the videos, he changed his plans because he wanted news headlines to focus on the war between believers and the disbelievers. Making reference to his support of ISIS. He stated that he had joined ISIS before the summer, and Jabbar had divorced twice, according to court records. So his first wife sued him back in 2012 over child support soon after he filed for divorce, and the court ordered him to pay amounts that increased over the years as his income also increased. The case was then dismissed in 2022, but that was his first divorce. He went through a second divorce in 2020. And at that point, a Texas judge granted Jabbar's second wife a restraining order against him during their divorce case. The order mandated Jabbar to refrain from threats, physical harm, or other stipulated behavior against his ex-wife and either of their children. And when it comes to his financial issues, he was in debt. And so in a January 2022 email filed as part of his divorce case, he wrote that he could not afford a mortgage payment on his house, which he said was more than $27,000 past due and in danger of foreclosure if his divorce settlement was further delayed. And he also stated in the email that a business that he had formed called Blue Meadow Properties, a real estate business, had lost money, about $28,000 the prior year, and that other businesses he formed weren't worth any money. he added that he had incurred about $16,000 in credit card debt. Now, he also had some run-ins with the law. There's one case back in 2000. It was like a petty theft case. He pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor as a result of that. And then in 2025, he was arrested for driving under the influence. He had a blood alcohol level that was too high to be behind the wheel. But those were really the only other, issues that he's had in his past. So it gives you a little sense of some of the trouble he had in the past. I don't know how much of that motivated his decision to carry out a horrific and vicious terrorist attack on New Year's Day. 14 people have been killed as a result, 35 innocent people injured. And critics are also very furious at the lack of safety precautions that were taken by authorities ahead of New Year's Day. Because think about it, this is Bourbon Street. You're going to have a ton of people celebrating, coming together. And so simply having police cars as barricades clearly wasn't enough. And so there were a lot of questions about the so-called security bollards. And so those are essentially like these steel or metal, little pillars almost in order to barricade an area and prevent someone from causing the kind of damage that Jabbar did here. But the authorities claim that they are in the process of being replaced for next month's Super Bowl. And so that's the reason why they didn't have those security bollards up, which I get wanting to have enhanced security for the Super Bowl, but maybe also have some enhanced security for a big celebratory event like New Year's Day on Bourbon Street. And so I'm sure we're going to be learning more about this story as it develops. It's hard to have any, strong definitive commentary on it when we don't know all the details. We don't know what the motive was. And it's just so incredibly disgusting to know that someone would feel the need to rob dozens of other people of their health, of their safety, of their lives, because of whatever they're going through. And these types of attacks, whether it's with a firearm or with a vehicle, happens way too often. And again, I just feel, I'm sad to say this, but I just feel that whenever it comes to big events, whenever it comes to some day that people are coming together to celebrate, there needs to be precaution taken by the authorities. They need to make sure that there are no excuses when it
It is the damn authorities. Go figure. Follow me.